Delegates, come into the room quietly. Take your seats according to your regions and state allocation, but do it quietly. We need to proceed with our program.
Thank you, Mr.
That's the nice way to shut up.
I hope everyone heard our chairman. He has spoken and he's asked that you enter quietly, cease all conversation, and take your seats. Okay. For this session, I'm joined by Mr. Raul Cunningham, member of the National Board of Directors from Louisville, Kentucky, who will serve as parliamentarian. Is Bishop Brooks here? Bishop Brooks? Please stand as Bishop P.A. Brooks, New St. Paul Tabernacle Church, gives the invocation.
Shall we bow our heads? Gracious God, we thank you for our beloved and venerated NAACP for the century and 10 that they have been the vanguard of justice for people across this great United States. We pray that you would give us the vision to see your love in this world that's rife with human failure and a nation that's polarized by the evil of pride, greed, and racism. Give us the faith to trust your goodness in spite of our ignorance and weakness. In this divided nation which has lost sight of your unifying power, fill the hearts of humankind with the fire of your love, with a desire to ensure justice for all those who have fallen victim to hatred and inhumanity, for those who are left behind to mourn loved ones who are lost to violence and hatred, for the souls of those whose hearts are cold, Lord, please hear our prayer. For the children who are being born into this world of conflict and violence, for women and mothers who suffer needlessly, for all those who have been forced into unemployment, who long to return to work, for those who struggle to support their families, Lord, please hear our prayer. We pray, Lord, that you would right all the wrongs that are taking place in the world today and vindicate those that are being treated unjustly. Keep us, Father, from trying to take matters into our own hands, for vengeance is yours, and you will repay. But Lord, in your grace and mercy, we pray that you would give justice and peace to all those who have been cruelly and unfairly treated by their fellow men, and may injustice and carelessness that they have had to endure be the means to draw them into your saving grace. This we ask to you, Father of justice, Father of equity, in the name of Christ the Lord. And the people said, amen.
Thank you, Bishop Brooks. I am now pleased to introduce Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson and Democratic National Committee Chair Tom Perez, along with Congressman Al Green of Texas. They will come at this time in that order to bring greetings. I'm sorry, Congressman Green first of Texas, and then Ms. Benson, and then finally Tom Perez, in that order.
Thank you very much. Let's give Ms. Williams a very special expression of appreciation. Let's hear it from Ms. Williams, please. And while you're doing it, I think it appropriate for us to celebrate our chairman who is with us, who leads us, who's always there for us. Let's hear it for our chairman, please. Thank you so much, Chairman Leon Russell. I want to acknowledge the president of this august body. I don't see him, but I know he's here. He is always here. If not present, he's here in spirit. Let's hear it for Derek, please. Derek Johnson, the president. I have some friends who are here from Houston, Texas. I have to acknowledge them. This delegation is led by our president, James Douglas. We have Yolanda Smith, our executive director. We have Claude Cummings, and we also have many other persons here, including John Bland. Let's hear it for my Houston people, if you don't mind. Thank you. Friends, let me be very brief. My time is of the essence because I have many miles to travel before I sleep. I must be in Washington, D.C. this evening. Friends, Dr. King reminds us that the truest measure of the person is not where you stand in times of comfort and convenience, but where do you stand in times of challenge and controversy. I promise to be brief. And these are times of challenge and controversy. We have in the White House a person who does not respect the humanity of the people that we represent. We have in the White House a person who is ruthless and lawless, and I am a person who believes that such a person should not occupy the White House in the United States of America. So I'm here with you today because I know who you are. You are the organization. I'm a part of you. I'm a life member and a diamond member. You're the organization that filed Shelley versus Kramer and Burroughs versus Jackson to allow us to outlaw restrictive covenants and live in neighborhoods where we couldn't live prior to those cases being litigated. You litigated, and successfully, I might add, Brown versus the Board of Education. If the truth be told, we eat where we eat, we sleep where we sleep, and we live where we live because of the NAACP. And I believe that we are people who are committed to the cause of justice. We are people committed to the notion that if you tolerate hatred and bigotry and racism, you will perpetuate it. We are people who are here to end hatred and bigotry, and because we want to end it, we have to do what few others are willing to do, and that is take on the President of the United States of America. This is what the NAACP's mission is. Now, I love the NAACP, and I believe you do too. If you love it and you know it, why don't you stand up and show it? Let's hear it for the greatest human rights, civil rights organization on the planet Earth that's going to do what's necessary to protect decency, who's going to do what's necessary to protect civility. We are the NAACP. We will be heard. We will stand up for those who cannot stand up for themselves. God bless you and thank you.
And next we have the Secretary of State, Ms. Jocelyn Benson. Okay, we're going to move to, at this point, to the Democratic National Committee Chair, Mr. Tom Perez, who will bring us greetings. Okay. We need you to be quiet so that you can hear. Please be quiet. Please be quiet.
Awesome. Good morning. What an honor to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Derek Johnson. Thank you, Chairman Russell. Thank you, Hillary Shelton. My relationship with Hillary goes back about 25 years. He's here somewhere. Congressman Green, thank you for your unflagging leadership on behalf of the cause of justice. I want to thank all of our DNC members who are here. I just ran into Hazel Dukes in the back. I know other people are here. Our Black Caucus Chair, Virgie Rollins, is here from the great city of Detroit. It's always great to be with you, Virgie. I want to give a special shout out to your members of Congress here from Detroit, Brenda Lawrence, Rashida Tlaib. Worked closely with Congressman Conyers in the past. Thank you, Congressman Conyers, for your invaluable service. And it is wonderful, as always, to be back with the NAACP here in Detroit, in so many other places. I remember Kansas City, I remember Texas, so many other places. I've worn many different hats when I have been here, and it is great to be here in the great city of Detroit. Folks, we're going to be here in 1 week to have the second Democratic Party debate of the presidential candidates, because Detroit is a very, very important city to the Democratic Party. It's a very, very important city to America. It's a city that embodies the values and character of the Democratic Party. It's a city of grit and determination. It's a city that's gotten knocked down from time to time, but when we knock down, we get right back up, and that's what they do. And we will again be here next week. And it's Detroit, and right here in Cobo Hall, as you know, where Dr. King first delivered his "I Have a Dream" refrain. And he famously drafted that speech, as you know, in Solidarity House at the UAW, not too far from here. Now, folks, the word solidarity, oh, well, I'll let you come here.
Delegates. Delegates! We can be more polite than that. It is not necessary for all of the chatter. I don't know what's going on, but we really need you to be quiet in what you're doing. So please, whatever you're doing, please move quickly to your seats, but quietly. Thank you. We apologize, Mr. Perez.
No, my pleasure. It's an honor to be here. Let me cut to the chase, folks. We got 469 days till the weekend. 469 days until the most important election of our lifetime. When we fight, we win. When we unite to fight for our values, we win. When we fight for $15 an hour, we win. When we fight for Flint, we win. When we fight for health care, we win. When we fight to end mass incarceration, we win. When we fight for housing, we win. When we fight for education, we win. When we fight for women, we win. When we fight for immigrant rights, we win. When we fight for civil rights, we win. When we fight for Eric Garner, we win. And you know what, folks? As somebody who ran the division, had the privilege under Barack Obama of running the Civil Rights Division, to see what happened to Eric Garner last week is an acute reminder of why elections matter. Because you need the right people in the right positions. Folks, we fight for a nation where asylum seekers are treated with dignity, not left to die, where families can find safety, not separation, where children are shown compassion, not forced into cages. You know, the history of separating children from their parents and putting them in cages is a history that this room is acutely aware of. It never should have happened hundreds of years ago. It never should have happened months ago. It is a stain on who we are as a nation. And that's why I come back to you to say, we got 469 days till the weekend. I ran for this job because you know what, folks? When we organize early, organize everywhere, organize together, that's how we win. That's exactly what we're doing, folks. I spent a lot of time with a lot of you in this room, and you were brutally honest with me. And unlike Jack Nicholson, I can handle the truth. You told me the following, and you were right. Tom, you got to stop showing up every 4th October pretending that you care. You got to show up every day in my community. You got to listen. You got to learn. You got to organize. And you got to act. And you're right. And that's exactly what we did. We spent more money, we invested more in the 2018 midterm elections than ever before. You look at Pennsylvania, you look at Michigan, you look at Wisconsin. We ran the table in all of the statewide elections. Why? Because we organized early. We organized everywhere. We led with our values. We fielded remarkable candidates. And as a result of those investments across the country, you heard from the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, this week. And folks, make no mistake about it, Nancy Pelosi has been delivering. Look at what the Congress and the House of Representatives has passed under her leadership. Laws to protect access to health care and make prescription drugs more accessible. Election security. The DREAM Act. Laws, the Equality Act to prohibit discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. The Climate Action Now Act to take action to protect our climate. Legislation to reauthorize the Violence Against Women Act, a critically important piece of legislation. Common sense gun violence reduction measures passed under this watch of this Speaker. Just last week, the minimum wage was increased by the U.S. House of Representatives. Legislation to address our broken democracy, H.R. 1. All of these things were done under the watch of Nancy Pelosi and Democrats in the House. And now they sit gathering dust in that cemetery known as the United States Senate. Folks, we've got work to do. And I'm here to tell you what we're doing at the DNC. We're organizing early, we're organizing everywhere, and we're working together with all of our partners. As we speak right now, we have organizers here in Detroit, in Milwaukee, in other cities across the country. We listen to you. We're not waiting for next October. We have organizers on the ground now. Organizing Corps, an initiative of the DNC and our partners, in which we have hired 1,000 people, young people, organizing in 7 key battleground states, including the great state of Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Arizona, organizers in all of those states. In our first group of 300, 77% people of color, 95% from their own state. So the organizers here in Michigan are working with the likes of Virgie Rollins and others to organize here in Wayne County and elsewhere. Folks, that's what we're doing. We've invested more than ever in data and technology so that we will be able to talk to everybody. That's what we're doing, folks, and we're doing it everywhere. We're doing it together. And folks, the most important thing we can remember moving forward is to make sure we lead with our values. We don't allow this president to distract us. We focus on the task at hand. That is winning. That's why we will win in 469 days. We'll win together, and we'll take back our democracy together. Thank you so much for having me. Let's keep working together, and I'll see many of you 1 week from now right here in the great city of Detroit.
At this time, delegates, we have a treat for you. All of you need to be listening because the man I'm getting ready to call forward to the podium is most appropriate to issue the charge. I'm speaking of no other than Reverend Wendell Anthony, member of the National Board of Directors, and pastor of Fellowship Chapel, Detroit, Michigan. Reverend Anthony, would you come forward at this time and give us the charge?
Thank you so much. Let me say good morning to all the delegates, freedom fighters, those who believe in justice, those who believe in justice and not just us, those who are here because the time says that we need to be here. In 1971, Marvin Gaye from this city penned words to a song called What's Going On. He said, "Mother, mother, mother, there's far too many of you crying. Brother, 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 there's far too many of you dying. I know we've got to find a way to bring some loving here today." That was in 1971, during the height of the Vietnam War, during the Richard Nixon era. And it was a period in which we came together to bring some love and to bring some organizing and to bring some folk who believed in justice together. Well, in 2019, there's still far too many of us crying. There's still far too many of us dying. There's still too many of us who need to find a way to bring some love in here today. And that's why we're here today. It reminds me of the fact that we right now are in a pit. The pit that we are in is one of racism, one of division, one of folk wanting to snatch the very basic necessities of having health care from our very being. We are in a pit because folk don't want to share the wealth with us. We're in a pit because people want to take us back 50 years, and we ain't going back to the plantation. We ain't going back. We've come too far to be turned back now. We are here in Detroit because we're commemorating 400 years of the transatlantic slave trade. We're here in Detroit because of 100 years since 500 black children sang "Lift Every Voice and Sing," written by James Weldon Johnson, music by his brother J. Rosamond Johnson. We're here because it's 65 years after Brown versus the Board of Education. But we still find ourselves in this pit. How do we get out of the pit? A subjective person came along and said, "I feel for you down there in that pit." An objective person came along and said, "It's logical that somebody would fall down there in the pit." A conservative came along and said, "Only bad people fall in the pit." A mathematician calculated how he must have fallen into the pit. A news reporter wanted the exclusive story on how he got in the pit. An IRS agent asked if you were paying taxes while you're down there in the pit. A self-pitying person said, "You haven't seen anything until you've seen my pit." A fire and brimstone preacher came by and said, "You deserve your pit." A Christian Scientist observer said, "The pit is in your mind." A psychologist noted, "Your mama and your daddy are to blame for you being in that pit." A self-esteem therapist said, "Believe in yourself and you can get up out of the pit." An optimist said, "Things could be worse for you while you're down in that pit." And the NAACP came along and saw the man in the pit, reached down, gave him a hand, and lifted him up out of his pit. We are here to lift our people up out of the pit because we're in a pit. And let me say this, because I don't think you got what I just said. I was born in a little place called St. Louis, Missouri, in a town called Kinloch. We had a good family situation. Families stayed together. My grandmother, who was a matriarch like some of your grandmamas, always taught us that when one gets in trouble, everybody better come along and deal with the situation in which he or she finds them in. Well, one day, I found myself walking home from school, and I was up on top of a hill, and my grandmama and my auntie was down the hill, and they were looking up at me coming from school, and this big guy came along, this wide fella. His name was Robert Lee. I'll never forget him. We liked the same little girl in school. I think she liked me better than she liked him. At any rate, Robert Lee came to me and he said, "I'm going to take you out." and he pushed me down on the ground. And he got on top of me, and he had the best of me. And I pushed him up off of me. But then he jumped back on me, and he threw a can at me. But then as I was looking, I saw my grandmama down the hill. She was looking down up at me. And then I turned to my right, and I saw my cousin Eddie Boy coming. And I turned to my left, and I saw my cousin Lewis coming. And I looked straight ahead, and I saw my cousin Tyrone coming. And when he saw my cousins coming, he jumped up and took off running. And I got up, and we could not catch him. Well, I'm looking at my cousins today. Region 1 is a cousin. Region 2 is a cousin. Region 3 is a cousin. Region 4 is a cousin. Region 5 is a cousin. Region 6 is a cousin. Region 7 is a cousin. Labor is a cousin. Correct politicians is a cousin. All the faith-based community is a cousin. Grassroots is a cousin. Business is a cousin. When the cousins come together, when everybody comes together, we can fight until we win.
Somebody said a charge to keep I have. All right, thank you, Reverend Anthony. I am going to do a little something out of order this morning. Congressman Green needs to go back to Washington, but I need him to do more than give the greeting that he gave. I need him to speak to an emergency resolution that you will receive shortly. We'll take it up in the proper order, but I want Congressman Green to address the resolution before he leaves the stage. So I'm going to give him that opportunity. Would you give attention to Congressman Al Green of Texas, member of the Houston branch, delegate to this convention.
Thank you, Cousin Russell. Dear friends, brothers and sisters, if I may say so, I'm here to quickly now present a resolution that the chairman and the president talked to me about. This resolution is properly styled, and you'll get a chance to read it later on, in a ACP resolution calling for the impeachment of Donald John Trump, President of the United States of America. Somebody might want to let me know that that's the right thing to do. Do you believe that we can file a motion to impeach, a resolution to impeach? I want you to know, take him out. All right, let me, thank you. I have to interrupt. Let me do this. I have to interrupt. Thank you for your enthusiasm and your commitment to the cause of freedom. But I have to tell you a little bit about this resolution. The first thing that I want you to know is the resolution that I have drafted for you is a resolution that could be filed in the Congress of the United States of America, and it would go to the floor of the House of Representatives. This is a legitimate resolution of impeachment. How do I know? Because I filed 1, 2, 3 of them, and all 3 of them have come to the floor of the House of Representatives. The last one got 95 votes. We are marching on to victory is won. We want 212 votes so that we can remove Donald John Trump from the White House. Now, this resolution, you need to hear this part of it. Whereas the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, upholds the bedrock principle, no one is above the law. Whereas the Constitution of the United States is the supreme law of the land. And whereas Article 2, Section 4 of the Constitution of the United States of America indicates that the President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. And whereas in his capacity as President of the United States, unmindful of the high duties of his high office, of the dignities and proprieties thereof, and the harmony and respect necessary for stability within society of the United States, Donald John Trump has, with his bigoted statements, done more than simply insult individuals and groups of Americans. He has harmed the American society by attempting to convert, and by converting his bigotry, his statements, into United States policy, and by associating the presidency of the United States of America with bigotry on one or more occasions. Now, this resolution deals with the whole notion that as president, the President of the United States tried to ban Muslims from coming into the country. It deals with the whole notion that transgender persons were being removed from the military and barred from being in the military. It deals with the racists that were in Charlottesville, where a woman lost her life, where they were saying, Jews will not replace us, where they screamed blood and soil. It deals with the whole notion, as articulated by the President, that there are SHITHOLE countries in Africa. It deals with the child separation that's taking place at the border. It deals with the fact that the House of Representatives has condemned the President for his racist comments, where he has said, go back. And let me add this is not in the resolution, but we were brought here in chains, our forefathers. We have fought, we have built this country, we have died for this country, and we are not going back, and no President of the United States ought to say go back, because the NAACP has your back. The NAACP is there for us. Finally, this. It reads, therefore, be it resolved that Donald John Trump is unfit to be president, is unfit to represent the American values of decency and morality, respectability and civility, honesty and propriety, reputability and integrity, is unfit to defend the ideals that have made America great, is unfit to defend liberty and justice for all as exalted in the Pledge of Allegiance, is unfit to defend the American ideal of all persons being created equal as exalted in the Declaration of Independence, is unfit to ensure domestic tranquility, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity as lauded in the preamble to the United States Constitution, is unfit to protect government of the people, by the people, for the people, as elucidated in the Gettysburg Address. Be it therefore resolved that in all this the aforementioned Donald John Trump has by his statements brought the high office of President of the United States into contempt, ridicule, disgrace, and disrepute, has sown seeds of discord among the people of the United States, has demonstrated that he is unfit to be president, and has betrayed his trust as President of the United States to the manifest injury of the people of the United States, and has committed a high misdemeanor in office, and be it finally resolved that Donald John Trump, by causing such harm to the society of the United States, is unfit to be president and warrants impeachment, trial, and removal from office. And I want to assure you that if you pass this resolution will go into the records of the Congress of the United States of America. If you pass this resolution, you will be on record letting those who look through the vista of time know that at this time, when others did not take a stand, the NAACP took a stand for every woman and every man in this country. This resolution will speak to not only who we are as individuals, but what the NAACP does to help every individual have his human dignity and human rights protected. This resolution will be a resolution that you can be proud of, that you can stand up and say, I was there when the resolution was presented. I voted for it, and I'm proud to know that it may be presented to the Congress of the United States of America for the impeachment of Donald John Trump. Thank you. God bless you.
Congressman Al Green of Texas. Safe travels, Congressman. We will now have the report of the Credentials Committee, which will be given by Mr. Derek Forward, Dayton, Ohio, and Chairman of the National Credentials Committee. Mr. Forward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I just want to take this opportunity to thank the Chairman of the Board and the Vice Chair and the President and everyone across this country who sent me cards, text messages in the loss of my wife. So I really appreciate that, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair Boykin Towns, Mr. President. Region 1, delegates. Voting, 140. Alternate 6. Observers, 39. Total, 185. Region 2, voting, 270. Alternates, 30. Observers, 83. Total, 383. Region 3, voting, 348. Alternates, 59. Observers, 128. Total, 535. Region 4, voting, 62. Alternates, 11. Observers, 18. Count by region, 91. Region 5, voting, 393. Alternates, 27. Observers, 78. Count by region, 498. Region 6, voting, 139. Alternates, 14. Observers, 34. Count by region, 187. Region 7, voting, 96. Alternates, 6. Observers, 43. Count by region, 145. At large, observers, 30. Count by region, 30. Total voting delegates as of yesterday evening, 1,448. Alternates, 153. Observers, 453. Count by region, 2,054. Madam Chair, I move for adoption.
It has been properly moved and seconded that we receive the report of the Credentials Committee. Are there any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor raise your voting card. Thank you. Those opposed, raise your voting cards. The credentials report is accepted. Thank you, Mr. Forward. Resolutions are a part of the process for addressing NAACP process, action, and policy. Therefore, we invite Mr. Leon Russell, Chairman of the NAACP National Board of Directors, Tampa, Florida, who will preside during the resolutions process, to come to the podium at this time. Please stand and receive our chairman.
Good morning. Now, Board Member Mady Robinson, Vice Chair of the Resolutions Committee, will preside. I will present the resolutions. Before I turn the chair over to Ms. Robinson, I want to thank the Resolutions Committee, the members of the Resolutions Committee who are seated here on the dais, and the staff of Resolutions. Stand up, y'all. Stand up, everybody. This is the hardest working committee in the NAACP. They've done a yeoman's job. What you're looking at is 2 days of work considering over 150 resolutions that you submitted to us, which means that all of them didn't get in the packet. If you haven't received an explanation of why your resolution didn't get in the packet, you will. You will. But I do want to express a special thanks to Resolutions Committee, where is she? Resolutions Committee member Elaine C. Harrington, representing the great state of Alabama and the city of Tuskegee, because Resolutions Committee, Dr. Harrington, had the resolutions at home. She edited every single one of these resolutions and submitted them back to the staff. That's special work. That's special work, and I want to thank her for doing that. With that, I'm going to turn the chair over to Ms. Mady Robinson of Florence, South Carolina.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, delegates. Are you ready to legislate this morning? All right, that's why we're here. We have some rules, some housekeeping activities that we need to take care of, and we will proceed to our first resolution. I believe there is a motion. Is G the parliamentarian? Is G the parliamentarian? Yeah. The rules that need to be adopted for this legislative session are as follows. All voting shall be done by displaying voting cards. No amendment shall be considered that has not been previously submitted in writing on the form provided to you. No amendment shall be considered that has not been previously submitted in writing on the form provided to you. No delegate may speak to a single issue more than twice. No delegate may speak more than 3 minutes per recognition. Delegates who wish to speak shall stand at a microphone to be recognized. Delegates who speak shall identify themselves by name and unit represented. Resolutions shall be adopted by section unless a delegate asks to address an individual resolution with the proposed amendment or with debate. The chair will entertain a motion to adopt these rules for this 110th legislative session. Moved and properly second. Are there questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed, ayes have it. We will now move in. Mr. James G. will act as the parliamentarian for this session. Mr. G. Okay. We will now move into the resolutions. Mr. Chair.
On page 12 of the document, we have, and we're using the Huffman rule. We have the civil rights packet consisting of 2 resolutions, NAACP condemnation of Islamophobia and eliminate gender disparities and advancing gender equity. Is there objection to consideration
Is that my camera?
of this under the
Just look at me.
Huffman rule? I have an amendment on the floor. Yes, I do.
Hey folks, Roland Martin here. We are, of course, in Detroit for the 110th annual NAACP annual convention. And right now, of course, they're about to vote on various resolutions. Joining us right now, a former president of NAACP branch in Houston, now congressman from Houston, Al Green. How you doing?
I'm doing quite well, better than I deserve, dear brother. Thank you for all that you do. Many people don't know of your great works in the human rights, civil rights movement to the extent that I do. I want the world to know that I appreciate you.
I appreciate it. Thank you so very much. Let's get right to it. You just finished speaking on stage, speaking to a resolution for the NAACP calling for the impeachment of Donald Trump. Why is it important, even though the NAACP is a nonpartisan organization, why is it important from your vantage point that they support that resolution and pass it?
Well, thank you. The NAACP is maintaining its position of being nonpartisan. That's a nonpartisan resolution. It's not about Democrats, it's about democracy. It's not about Republicans, it's about the Republic. And it's important to have the NAACP's name associated with this endeavor because the NAACP brings a level of credibility that no other organization can bring. It's the oldest civil rights organization in the country, and it will have some influence on people who actually vote in the House of Representatives, knowing that the NAACP is on board.
Obviously, you had less than 100 folks who voted for it, but since you have an additional number of Democrats who come out for this as well, Robert Mueller is testifying tomorrow as well. Do you think it's important for people to also continue to put pressure on Speaker Nancy Pelosi to have hearings so people can actually hear the various details in that Mueller report as opposed to what we've seen thus far, just Attorney General Barr giving his synopsis?
I think hearings are important, but I also know this, that the president has said enough in the public domain for us to move forward. The president can be impeached for his bigotry. Andrew Johnson was impeached for bigotry in 1868. I believe it would be far better for us to impeach him for his bigotry than obstruction of justice. Now, I was the first to call for his impeachment for obstruction of justice on the House floor, but I understand now that this is an opportunity for us to send a message to those who will look through the vista of time in terms of how we attack bigotry. Those who tolerate bigotry perpetuate bigotry. We should not allow it to perpetuate. We can actually impeach a president for it. We just have to demand it. I assure you, if this president behaved this way and he were a certain other president, let's just call him President Obama, he would be impeached just for what he has said.
Do you also believe that this emboldens him by having essentially no repercussions against him for his actions?
You are so correct, eminently so. When he sees that there are no guardrails, it does embolden him. He has become now a president who believes that he can do pretty much anything that he wants. And by the way, that's what he's doing. When he says go back, that's a trope that you and I understand has been used many times against us personally, and it is something that sends a message to another group of people in society who didn't want us to be here in the first place. Those people then become activated. He incites hate. We must not allow him to finish his presidency without our having had our last word, which is impeachment.
Last question for you, and then you have to get back to Washington, D.C. Let's talk about your thoughts on the cowardice of Republicans who are unwilling to really stand up in significant numbers. Only 4 voted for the Democratic resolution to condemn his racist tweets. Many are offering all kind of excuses. That to me, again, shows exactly where the Republican Party is today in 2019, that they as a party will not condemn clear, undeniable racism from this man.
History will not be kind to the Republican Party for its lack of standing up for the American people. You're not standing up for black people. You're not standing up for brown people. You're standing up for the American people whenever you take on bigotry and hatred and a president who has obstructed justice. This is all about whether anyone is going to be above the law. We all say no one is above the law. Well, if you don't take a stand against what the person is doing that is against the law, then you're allowing that person to be above the law. We ought not allow this to happen. I don't think history is going to be kind to Republicans. Now, having said that, I have to say this. We need the spirit of 1868 in the Congress because, and that's when Andrew Johnson was impeached, because we cannot allow this to become just Republicans. Democrats have got to get on the impeachment bandwagon as well. While I would love to have Republicans, we have 235 Democrats. We can do this without a Republican. I would love to do it, but we can't.
For the folks who don't understand the Constitution,
sure.
House impeaches, Senate convicts,
exactly,
or finds not guilty. So the reality is, so when you say impeached, he could be impeached in the House. That goes down, obviously, for record. The conviction comes in the Senate. That's where the removal comes in.
Absolutely correct. And Andrew Johnson, who was impeached, did not win his next election, by the way. Bill Clinton was impeached. His heir apparent did not win the election. Impeachment is an indelible stain that is placed on a president. The House does it. We can do it with 212 votes, assuming all members of president voting. 218 votes, all members present and voting. We in the House can take up this with or without Republican support, and we can pass impeachment with or without Republican support.
And you don't. And again, first of all, your job in the House is to do the business of the House. When you hear Speaker Pelosi say, "Well, the Senate's not going to convict because it's a waste of time," that to me is the equivalent of saying, "Well, you could pass a bill which Democrats have done in the House, and McConnell doesn't take up." So what does that mean? You don't take up any bills in the House?
We have passed many bills in this session that he has not taken up. He's not going to take up minimum wage, the last one that we passed just before we left. We must do our job and let the Senate do its job. And I'll add this. If the Senate doesn't do its job, then you'll know what senators we need to take a second look at.
Got it.
Also, if the Senate doesn't do its job, then I believe history will show that the Senate itself was on the wrong side of history. Thank you very much.
Congressman Al Green, I know you got to go. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, then. So go right ahead.
All right.
Go right ahead. There we go. Again, folks, that was Congressman Al Green, of course, who is being one of the most vocal folks in the United States House of Representatives, calling for the impeachment of Donald Trump. He, of course, read from the podium. We carried it live here, the resolution, so we'll let you know exactly what happens if the NAACP passes or votes down that particular resolution. And so, as we're waiting on, right now, folks, we want to come right on in. Come right on in. Joining us right now, folks, is Tom Perez. Of course, he is the chairman of the Democratic National Committee. How you doing? Take a seat right here, sir. Good to have you here.
It's always a pleasure to be here. Great to be with you.
Glad to see you. First and foremost, I just chatted with Congressman Al Green here. Your thoughts on his continuing push, calling for the impeachment of President Trump, and trying to get this body to actually pass a resolution endorsing that.
Well, I think tomorrow is going to be important because we need to hear from Director Mueller. I was a prosecutor at the Department of Justice for a long time. I did public corruption cases, Roland. I had a lot of people who would come to me and say, you've got to indict this person tomorrow. And I understood that instinct because there was frequently a cloud of uncertainty that hung over it. I'm a big believer, and this is based on 13 years at DOJ, that I have to marshal the facts. I have to gather the facts before I move forward with something. And that's exactly what they're doing on the House side. That's why tomorrow is a seminal day to hear from Director Mueller. I did a lot of public corruption cases where the defendants were stonewalling, and I had to go to court. And that's what our House leadership is doing right now, and we're winning every time in court.
So you believe the process that Speaker Nancy Pelosi is the right one in terms of taking this thing slow, as opposed to immediately going to hearings or immediately taking an impeachment vote?
I agree with Speaker Pelosi, and I think I've always been a believer, ready, aim, fire. And also the thing to understand is the only way to defeat this president is at the ballot box. Because the U.S. Senate, if this president is impeached, they don't do anything they're a lapdog for Donald Trump. And so I want to make sure my focus as DNC chair is I got 489 days till the weekend, and my focus every single day is to make sure that we are organizing people. That's why we're here at the NAA conference. That's why we're coming back next week for the second Democratic Party debate. Places like Michigan, Detroit in particular, are critical to our success. We're organizing early, and that's what we have to do to win is to get into every community, articulate our values, listen, and fight for those issues that matter most to people.
Let's talk about the presidential race. Obviously, you have a ton of people who are running. I think is it 25, 26. I know Congressman Eric Swalwell has dropped out. You've had some people critical of the rules. I just saw Governor Bullock on ABC this week on Sunday when I was on, complaining about that. Is that winnowing process important, establishing who doesn't meet a certain threshold? Because, again, at the end of the day, if you've got 10, 12 people who are not even getting 1%, does it make sense for them to be on the stage? And so talk about that winnowing process that you have.
Well, let me talk about our North Star first. Our North Star principle during this primary process has been we want to be fair to every single person who's running. We want to be fair in facts, fair in perception. And so back in January or February, we set forth the rules for the June debates. And they were inclusive, and I'm proud that they were inclusive because early on, I don't want to just have a polling threshold, Roland, because that just measures name ID in many cases. So we did something unprecedented. We gave people a polling pathway to the debate stage, and we gave people a grassroots fundraising pathway. We said for these first two debates, 1% in 3 polls or 65,000 donors. And we wanted to return power to the grassroots.
From a certain number of states as well.
And including at least 200 from no less than 20 states. And we got that from the 1971 public campaign finance law that Congress passed.
So you're trying to show breadth of one's appeal.
And also, if you want to win the presidency, you got to connect with the grassroots.
Right.
One of the most prolific grassroots fundraisers in politics right now is Donald Trump. And I've heard some criticism from some candidates saying that, well, this is too hard. And with all due respect, if you can't connect with the grassroots, then that's a real problem. And so we've set forth those two, the threshold for June and July. Now in September, it moves up, and that happens every debate cycle, every primary cycle. The closer you get to the Iowa and New Hampshire, the higher the bar is. And so for September, you need 2% and, not or, 2% and 130,000 unique voters, including 400 from 20 states. And if you've got 100,000 today, all you need is another 30. It doesn't go back to zero.
So let's talk about the September debate that's going to take place at Texas Southern University, my hometown in Houston, HBCU there as well. So explain to the folks. I know we've been communicating. Yeah. So it's also happening on a Thursday and a Friday, same time as Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, ALC. So explain to folks who have no idea. Yeah. Was that a DNC decision? Was that an ABC decision? How did that come about?
Right, we were in contact with the CBC Foundation in connection with this, and here's the challenge. We have a network, ABC, that's willing to give us 2 weeknights in a row. The challenge with September is
two prime time weeknight when the new TV season starts.
And that's the challenge. So if you look at September, you got September 11th. We're obviously not going to do something on 9/11. You've got Monday Night Football and Thursday Night Football, which we want to maximize eyeballs. And then when you get into the middle of September, that's when the new season starts, and it's frankly impossible to find 2 weeknights in September after the 15th where any of the non-cable networks would have done it. So,
and there were criticism in 2016 that you had debates on the weekends, so that's also there.
And we're sensitive to all of that. We want to make sure, again, my North Star, we want to make sure everyone gets a fair shake. And here's why. All but one of these candidates are not going to make it to the mountaintop, Roland.
Right.
And I want to make sure that all those candidates and their supporters feel like they got a fair shake. They got a chance to come to the plate, swing the bat. In this case, we have June, July. CNN, MSNBC, others have done these town halls. They've had unprecedented access to earned media, and some have been able to have their moments. Others are hoping to get those moments. All of them are wonderful candidates, and that's why I wanted to give them a fair shake.
A couple of things. One, we have not seen, and a lot of discussion, especially from black women, with these debates, not a single black woman who's operating as a moderator. That's an issue there. As a head of the party, do you make that? Obviously, the networks pick who they want, but do you also make that perfectly clear to them that you want to see that level of diversity of the people who are asking questions?
Oh, we have conversations with the networks all the time about the issues of diversity. You look at the first debate, and we had, African American male, we had Latino, we had 2 women, and we can always do better, and that's a conversation we have repeatedly
but
with
it's also
the networks.
but it's also a byproduct of, frankly, the lack of diversity at the networks.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's on them.
And that's the more outside entities put pressure,
right,
the better we do to build that pipeline.
Well, I'm with NABJ, so trust me, we've been putting pressure on them.
Well, I appreciate it.
Any possibility of black networks doing anything? Because, look, there are 8 of them that target African Americans. Have any of them reached out to the DNC?
Yeah, we've had conversations with a host of potential partners. I think you're going to find that every debate we do, there's going to be multiple media partners, and I think that's great, because it gives real opportunities, and we've had some conversation, and we'll continue those conversations.
Are you concerned when you all this back and forth? People say that there shouldn't be personal attacks. Some candidates say that Senator Harris are personally attacking Vice President Biden over busing. Are you concerned with any of that, or are you of the opinion, which I am, that look, when you run, your record is your record. You may get questioned about any of it, and the reality is you got to get put through the test to run for president of the United States.
Well, listen, whoever we got a couple dozen candidates for president. Whoever wins this nomination, by definition, will be battle tested, because people aren't going to simply lay down during the course of this primary, nor should they. We're going to have a robust discussion about health care. We're going to have a robust discussion about civil rights. And the thing about it that voters need to remember is that all of our candidates are light years ahead of the Republican Party. The party of Lincoln is officially dead, and it's been replaced by this extreme party of the right. And our candidates are all about building an America that works for everyone. Do they have some differences on issues of importance? Yes. But are their North Star values aligned? Absolutely.
Last question here. Obviously, you have you said 489 days before election. What are you, as the head of the party, what are you saying, not just to the DNC or to the DCCC, the DSCC, Democratic Governors Association, but also the other liberal groups, Emily's listed others. What are you saying to them about having a very clear and concise plan to target black voters, to make that investment, and to do it early? Because at the end of the day, mobilization, organization has to take place in order to win. People can talk about it, tweet about it, but if you're not registering people, if you're not mobilizing to get them to the polls, ain't going to happen. What are you saying to them that don't take the most important base of the Democratic Party for granted?
Well, I'm here because we never take them for granted, never will. And we've had many conversations starting in February of 2017 when I first got elected to be chair of the party. Our first major investments were 2017 in Alabama. And we know that Doug Jones is a U.S. Senator because of African American, generally African American women in particular. We were proud to be an early investor in that. And we've been working with our partners. You look at 2018. We won at scale in places like Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and elsewhere because we made dramatic investments. And the we is not just the DNC; it's we, the ecosystem.
Right.
In Florida, for instance,
there are more dollars in the ecosystem, frankly, than the DNC.
Yeah, no, we're one player in the ecosystem, and in today's world of Citizens United and dark money, there's a lot of different players. And here, Florida's a great example. We're working with a broader ecosystem to register 1 million voters. We in the party are taking on the task of 200,000. You've got Andrew Gillum, you've got others, and what I love about where we're at now is there's a unity of purpose out there. Our unity was on display in the 2018 cycle. Our unity will be on display again in 2020.
All right, Tom Perez, always a pleasure.
Roland,
I
great
appreciate
to be
it.
with
Thanks
you.
a lot. All right.
Have a great day.
Thanks so much. All right. No, you got to step out, so I just grabbed that from you. I appreciate it. All right. Again, folks, Tom Perez, Chairman, Democratic National Committee. So we're about to go back to the podium where the NAACP is voting on various resolutions. And so there are other folks who we may be interviewing. So we'll break into the live stream and actually do that. Don't forget, you can watch Roland Martin Unfiltered live 6 p.m. Eastern. Tonight, I'll be broadcasting from here as well. And don't forget also to support us as well. I'm going to do this here because I posted this photo. So, Anthony, do this here. So I want you to take a shot down here. So this is the press riser. It's for all of y'all who are watching. Okay, this is the press riser, and we got a light pole right there, so don't worry about that. And so yesterday, there were a number of cameras that were here yesterday. And don't worry about that. Don't worry about it. So they get a sense of it. There are a number of cameras who were here yesterday because Speaker Pelosi was speaking. But today, this is what you see. We are the only TV outlet who is here today. The only one. So the other business the NAACP is doing, the other speakers, we're the only one. I'm saying that so you can understand why Roland Martin Unfiltered matters. You have people talking about being new black media. You have people who are saying, oh, how important black media is. Well, but we're not at the places where black folks are, then what are we doing? And so this is not just about covering NAACP. It's the other things that are happening as well. Hearing directly from folks like Tom Perez or Congressman Al Green or others. That's why this matters. That's why Roland Martin Unfiltered matters, which is why your support matters as well. And so we appreciate all of the people who have given. In fact, this actually happened last night. I'm gonna post this photo on social media. A brother walked up to me last night, and he's already a donor. And he walked up and placed $50 in my hand, and he said, I am giving you this right now to make sure that your show stays on the air. Blown away, him to just put cash in my hand. He said that matters. And so I just want you to know, so please, folks, go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Again, we're the only one who are here, okay? My man Mark Thompson is here doing radio interviews, but in terms of television, that's it. I don't know who's here on the print side. When it comes to black folks in digital video, television, we're the only ones who are here who felt this was important, so that's why it matters. So go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Join our Bring the Funk fan club, and so that way you can help support what we do, because there are other conventions, other places that we plan on taking this show, broadcasting from over the next year and a half, getting ready for the election as well. And so that's what this is all about. Okay, folks, we're going to go back to the podium, and then I'll jump in when needed. I'm Roland Martin here from Detroit at the 110th Annual NAACP Convention.
Resolution is adopted as amended.
We are moving now to the resolutions on education. Section on education, page 40. The resolutions in section on education include number 1, NAACP calls for review of all Dr. Seuss works in all public schools, institutions, and public libraries. Number 2, support for African American history in K-12 curriculum, reaffirming Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, Justice Thurgood Marshall, Dr. Carter G. Woodson, NAACP education, reaffirmed 2010. Number 3, summer learning program, Brighter Futures. Number 4, 2015 guidance on school discipline reform by the Department of Education and the Department of Justice. Number 5, opposing arming school staff as part of a school student safety protection plan. Number 6, pre-kindergarten education. And number 7, post-secondary education. So number 6 in this packet, which is titled Pre-Kindergarten Education, we will hold for separate consideration. Madam Chairman, I move adoption of the education section at this time with the exception of resolution number 6.
Moved and properly second. Are there questions? Hearing none. All those in favor, raise your voting card. All of those opposed? Resolutions adopted. Chairman.
Moving then to resolution number 6. Therefore, be it resolved that the NAACP reaffirms its support for its 2013 resolution to expand high-quality early learning opportunities in the years before preschool and calls for the renewal of presidential support for significant investment in a new Early Head Start child care partnership. Continuation of competitive grants will support communities that expand the availability of early Head Start and child care that can meet the highest standards of quality for 3- and 4-year-olds. Be it further resolved that the NAACP reaffirms its support for its 2013 resolution to require states to meet quality benchmarks that are linked to better outcomes for children in order to access federal funding. This includes implementing state-level standards for early learning quality, qualifying teachers for all preschool classrooms, and planning to incorporate comprehensive data and assessment systems. Be it further resolved that all units of the NAACP support and promote the 2013 resolution and supports the Department of Health and Human Services 2016 revised rules. The NAACP emphasizes that Head Start programs will meet common and consistent standards for quality across all programs, which includes having well-trained teachers who have bachelor's degrees, paid comparably to K-12 staff, small class size, low adult-to-child ratios, a rigorous curriculum, comprehensive health and related services, effective evaluation and review of programs, and programs that are full-time and service children for a minimum of 1,020 hours per year by 2021. Be it further resolved that the NAACP supports increasing the percentage of teachers with a relevant bachelor's degree, such as early childhood education or child development, to 100% of Head Start teachers by 2021. Be it finally resolved that the NAACP calls upon the federal government and Congress to increase funding to the Head Start program. Madam Chair, I move adoption. There is an amendment by Dr. Roxana Marachi. Microphone number 1. I'm sorry. I keep doing your job.
I know you do.
Morning. Does the microphone work? Yes,
working.
it does now. Good morning, Dr. Roxana Marachi. I am the Education Chair of the San Jose Silicon Valley unit of the NAACP. I wanted to recommend an amendment that would strike the language of planning to incorporate comprehensive data and assessment systems. The reason for this is that we are in the information age, and right now the clause as written does not protect our youth against data exploitation. I'm concerned that it's going to be weaponized against our communities in the form of data sharing with agencies other than education, for example, the justice system, police agencies, et cetera. And unless we put some protections, it's going to be used against us. We are right now seeing a rise in the proposal of bills that are proposing longitudinal data systems. And that comprehensive right there is the kind of word that's in the fine print that is going to indicate a bait and switch. So it sounds really good, but the problem is that comprehensive means that we're going to be gathering emotional data, social data, health data, impulse control, all kinds of data on very young children, and used longitudinally and comprehensively. It's only going to be harmful to our communities. We have to put protections in place. There's a call to enhance data justice if we want to do true equity and social justice work. So I call to strike this language. There's likely going to be some basic assessment systems already in place to ensure that the programs are meeting basic standards, but we should not be including the comprehensive language in there.
Thank you very much, Delegate. Are there other? Okay. The committee accepts the amendment and the explanation. All those in favor of the resolution as amended, raise your voting card. Those opposed? Same sign. Resolution is adopted as amended. Mr. Chair.
The next section is environmental justice. Number 1 is environmental climate justice. Number 2 is in opposition to hydraulic fracturing. Those are the 2 resolutions in this section. Were there any amendments submitted for environmental?
Wait a minute. No resolution.
Seeing no objection, I move adoption of the environmental justice section, Madam Chair.
Moved and properly second. Are there questions? Hearing none. All those in favor, raise your voting card. Those opposed? Resolutions are adopted. Mr. Chair.
The next section is the resolutions on health. Number 1, discriminatory medical practices lead to high maternal death rates among African American women. Number 2, parents should be strongly urged to vaccinate their children against measles. Number 3 is prevention and early detection of HIV. Number 4 is stemming the tide of chronic kidney disease in the African American community. Number 5 is mental health urgent care clinics. Number 6 is mental health crisis mobile unit signposts. And number 7 is blood stem cell marrow donor availability for African American patients. Number 8 is prescription drug affordability board. Number 9 is plant-based meals in prison, K through 12, and hospitals. Number 10 is easy enrollment health insurance program. Number 11 is mental health post-traumatic prison condition. And those are the resolutions in the packet on health.
We have 2 amendments.
There are amendments to resolution on page 54, resolution number 1.
Number 2.
On page 54.
Discriminatory medical practice. Okay.
This is
Page
it.
54.
Page 54, the first one.
And page 56.
So we'll take each of them individually. There are only 2 or 3. Oh, there's several. Okay. So how many are there?
We have 2 amendments, so we'll take everything except those 2.
We're taking
Everything
out number 1 for separate consideration,
Number 3.
and number 3 for separate consideration.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I move adoption of the health packet with the exception of resolutions 1 and 3.
Moved and properly second that the health resolutions be adopted with the exception of resolutions 1 and 3. For what purpose does the delegate rise at microphone 1?
Oh.
Thank you. Are there questions?
Is Dr. Sheila Davis,
Dr. Sheila Davis.
Boulder?
Resolution number 1.
Yep.
Do you want? Yeah,
We're-
we'll do
we're
that.
looking-
Let me do this. No, we're going to do this, and then we'll do the amendments.
Oh, okay.
We will adopt all of the health. I have to help the chairman.
I know.
We will adopt all of the health resolutions with the exception of resolutions number 1 and 3. Are you ready to vote? All those in favor of adopting the health resolutions with the exception of resolutions 1 and 3, raise your voting card. Those opposed? Health resolutions are adopted. But we'll go back to resolution number 1, Mr. Chair. It's Dr. Sheila Davis from Boulder, Colorado. Microphone number 1.
Just a moment. No. Therefore, be it resolved that the NAACP will urge all of its units to work to identify and assist African American women to receive best practices in their prenatal and perinatal medical coverage and to take action necessary to improve medical outcomes for pregnant African American women and their babies. Madam Chair, I move adoption of the resolution.
Moved and properly second. Dr. Microphone 1.
Yes. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Dr. Sheila Davis. I'm a physician, and I've including access to family planning services because it's important to make explicit in this resolution access to family planning services given legislation that is passed in Alabama and Georgia and Ohio and Missouri and a host of other states.
Dr. Davis, the committee would like to know where would you like to insert this language?
Where it is, including access at the end.
Okay. So the reading would be, Mr. Chair.
So the amendment would state to improve outcomes for pregnant African American women and their babies, including access to family planning services.
Thank you.
Yes.
Committee accepts. Committee accepts. Are there other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of the resolution as amended, raise your voting card. Those opposed? Resolution is adopted as amended.
Number 3, prevention and early detection of HIV virus. Therefore, be it resolved that the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People advocates for early detection of the HIV virus. Be it finally resolved that the NAACP will urge all of its units to work together to educate the youth and adults on prevention, early diagnosis, and state-of-the-art management for HIV. Madam Chair, I move adoption of the resolution.
This resolution the committee accepted the amendment given, and that is given be spelled with an EN instead of ING.
In the second whereas.
In the second whereas. All those in favor of the resolution as amended, raise your voting card. Those opposed? Resolution is adopted as amended.
We're now moving to page 67, housing. Resolution number 1 is budget line items for public housing. That is the only resolution in the packet. Therefore, be it resolved that the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People advocate for increased funding for public housing as a line item in all federal, state, and city budgets. Madam Chair, and be it finally resolved that the NAACP will collaborate with other organizations and entities to conduct workshops on the process of engaging elected officials to accomplish the objectives set out above. Madam Chair, I move adoption of the resolution.
Moved and properly second. Are there questions? All those in favor, raise your voting card. Those opposed? Resolution is adopted.
Next section is information technology. Only one resolution in the packet. Therefore, be it resolved that the NAACP opposes any state or federal legislation that would require an individual to create a blockchain identity in order to receive any public service or benefits, including but not limited to education, health care, addiction treatment, behavioral health services, law enforcement, housing, and/or food and nutrition. Be it further resolved that the NAACP will engage in community education efforts to communicate to the public about the structure, function, benefits, and inherent risks of blockchain technologies. Madam Chair, I move adoption.
There's an amendment to this resolution, Mr. Chair.
Tiffany.
Ms. Tiffany Lanzam?
from
Good morning. Microphone 4, and I apologize if I mispronounced your last name.
That is fine. Good morning, everyone. My name is Stephanie Linzan of the Brooklyn branch, Region 2. I, as a data analytics engineer and scientist and current researcher in quantum computing, have suggested the amendment as we are not thinking holistically as to how this information technology can actually be used to protect us in the future for our currently insufficient algorithms used in quantum computing.
What is the, what's, where, what, where, what and where?
Ms. Linzam?
So more specifically, this amendment is targeting current tracking that could be used for discriminatory financial segmentation and also tracking via the web.
Where does your amendment go?
The amendment is within the first clause to be more specific after digital identity management.
The committee accepts. They wanted to make sure that they understood your translation.
So the statement more specifically is to work with organizations such as the National Institute of Standards and Technology or Data and Society Research for cross-device tracking, digital targeting and advertising, digital customer segmentation, and discriminatory financial profiling. Yes, it is written.
That's what
She has it written here.
that is what is written.
Okay. Microphone 1. Delegates,
I'd like to, hi.
delegates, excuse me, 1 minute. Delegates, it's difficult to see people at the mics because we have some movement. Is it about time for lunch or something?
I'd like to speak respectfully against the amendment because it makes this too specific. Right now we have blockchain identity technologies being piloted in Africa against our most vulnerable communities. It does not capture, this amendment says specific to cross-device tracking, digital targeting and advertising, digital customer segmentation, discriminatory profiling. It does not capture blockchain identity systems in education, which was the original intent and the concern of why we proposed this legislation. I think that all of those fall under the original resolution, and to make it more specific will only weaken it.
Thank you. Microphone 4.
This will be her second.
Thank you. Understood, and I would include education. However, I do believe that the entire resolution itself is restrictive. I don't think it thinks about the security vulnerabilities if we do limit ourselves to completely disregarding the technology. We currently find ourselves getting rid of or being scared of technology that we need to be more collaborative in and be more involved in the organizations to craft what we want.
So she gets one more time.
Okay, microphone 1, you get one more.
And then we're going to move.
Okay, thank you. With respect to the security issues, right now blockchain identity systems, blockchain technologies are being marketed as secure. A recent study found that the 43 of the top blockchain companies that had investments put into them did not deliver whatsoever at all. This is new technology. It's the new Theranos. We need to be very cautious. It's fine for products not services, products, but not for people. We should not be using blockchain identity systems to track people. What happens at the very early stages is that those behaviors I was talking about, the use of it in preschools and education and measuring the kinds of things that are happening, it never gets deleted. It's immutable. You can have false information that gets put on your blockchain and it never gets erased. So I would propose leaving it as is without that amendment. I think there might be future resolutions to address ways that it might be beneficial in supply chain and other kind of services, but not for human beings. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've had delegates. We have had two, we have comments, we've had two, the maker of the motion, the amendment has spoken twice, we've had two. So we are ready to prepare to move and have you to vote on the amendment. We are prepared to vote on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment, raise your voting card. Thank you. All of those opposed to the amendment? The amendment loses.
The amendment failed.
The amendment fails.
On
the motion, all of those in favor of the motion, raise your voting card.
motion to adopt
All of those in favor of the motion to adopt
the resolution.
Resolution number one on the information technology, raise your voting card. All of those opposed? Oh, God.
Now, you need to explain to them that they voted down the amendment.
Okay. Delegates?
The amendment failed. The amendment failed.
Delegates, we had the information technology resolution presented before us. We had an amendment presented. We had discussion on the amendment. We had the person who wrote the amendment to talk twice. We had two comments against. You voted that amendment down. We are now voting on the amendment as presented. On the resolution as presented. Delegates, we are voting on the resolution as presented. All of those in favor of the information technology resolution as presented, raise your voting card. Those who oppose to the amendment, resolution is adopted.
You got to say resolution, not amendment.
Mr. Chair. Now, the resolution was adopted. What the resolution?
The next section is internal affairs. Delegates, 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 delegates. You had a vote on the amendment. The amendment failed. Therefore, you move to the main subject. You adopted by a majority vote the main subject. The subject is closed. We are moving to internal affairs. Resolution number 1, support for the NAACP's Next Gen program. Number 2, accessible venues. And number 3, inclusion of LGBT, diversity, and sensitivity training in NAACP programs. Madam Chair, I would move adoption of resolutions number 1 and number 3 in this packet. We will come back to number 2, Madam Chair.
Moved and properly second that resolutions 1 and 3 be adopted. All those in favor, raise your voting card. All of those opposed? Resolution is adopted. Mr. Chair.
On resolution number 2, on page 73, therefore be it resolved that the NAACP ensure all venues where NAACP events are held are accessible to all. This comes from Mr. Simulton of Alabama.
Do y'all accept the amendment? Committee accepts.
Wait, you still need to read it.
Go ahead. You gonna read it?
He's at microphone 5. Delegate Simulton.
Mr. Bernard Simonton, microphone 5.
Where and what.
Good morning.
Good morning. Would you tell us, Mr. Simonton, where this language would be inserted?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Bernard Simonton, Alabama State Conference President. And on the screen is where the information should be inserted. And what we have found is when you ask someone for accessibility.
Hold up, Simonton. Where in the resolution, we don't amend on the screen, we amend it.
It's on the last therefore.
Keep going.
Okay. It should strike out accessible and insert and change that to Americans with Disability Act compliance.
Okay. Okay. Oh, right here.
The last therefore.
Mr. Simonton, please read it and please read it as amended, as it would be amended.
All right.
In accordance.
Therefore, be it resolved that the NACP ensure that all venues where NACP events are held
are accessible to all in accordance
are
with
in
the
compliance
Americans with Disability Act.
Are in compliance with the American with Disability Act.
We got you.
Are in compliance with the American with Disability Act.
Would you read it? Mr. Simonton, please read it once more.
Okay.
Delegates. This is very important. Please let me have your attention. Thank you very much. Mr. Simonton, please read once more.
Therefore, be resolved that the NACP ensure that all venues where NACP events are held are in compliance with the American with Disability Act.
Committee accepts.
Okay, thank you.
All those in favor of the resolution as amended, raise your voting card. All those opposed? Resolution is adopted as amended.
Next section is Immigration International Affairs. Number 1 is promoting and celebrating Eritrea and Ethiopia. That is the only resolution in this section, Madam Chair. I move adoption of the section.
Moved and properly second. All those in favor, raise your voting card. All opposed, same sign. Resolution is adopted.
The next section is legislative and political action. Number 1, support an aggressive plan to increase Pell Grants and other programs to help people afford a secondary education. Is that supposed to be post-secondary? Number 2, candidate financial disclosures. Number 3, reparations. Number 4, student loan services, unfair, abusive, or deceptive trade practices. Number 5, summer food supplement, child nutrition reauthorization. Those are the resolutions in the section. Is there an amendment? Okay, there are 2 amendments to resolution number 3 on reparations. We will separate number 3 on resolutions 1, 2, and 4, and 5. I move adoption of resolutions 1, 2, 4, and 5 in the legislative political action section.
Moved and properly second. All those in favor, raise your voting card. Those opposed? Resolutions are adopted.
Number 3. On page 83. On page 83, therefore be it resolved that the NAACP reaffirms and stands in favor of financial reparations to African Americans and those of African descent in the United States that are descendants of slavery and Jim Crow. I move adoption, Madam Chair.
Kevin Felder, resolution, microphone 3.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Kevin Felder from the Dallas branch. I rise to address the issue with regard to the bullet point on cannabis, page 81 and resuming on page 82. I don't believe that cannabis has anything to do with slavery. I think that is more appropriate to be in economic development. The key is what we want to try to do if we want to address reparations is to try to make sure that we get as many in Congress to support it and make sure the bill passes. When you put something like this in there, I think that it's going to cloud the issue. And so I ask for that to be deleted.
Which sections?
Which section, Mr.
Felder?
Page 81, bullet point 2 at the bottom of the page. And it goes over into the next page, top of page 82.
The bullet point with respect to rights in the cannabis industry.
Yes, I ask for that to be deleted.
Is there support?
Yes. Well, I ask for everything that refers to cannabis to be deleted.
The committee said okay. The committee supports that.
All right, there's one other bullet point that I asked about on page 82 with regard to the $600,000 payment. I believe as a people, we should not...
Wait, hold on. On the issue that you just raised about deleting cannabis.
Yes.
Persons at microphone number 2, for what purpose are you standing?
We created an amendment to page 83.
Okay, so you don't want to speak on this issue?
What about? Yes. What about?
Wait a minute. Yes. Microphone 2.
I would like to speak on the issue. Jasmine Morton from the DuPage branch. I authored this resolution. This entire resolution is a stimulus package for the African American community, and the thought behind adding cannabis to this resolution was similar to that of Native Americans' rights to the casino industry. This particular fight within our community doesn't specifically deal with the enslavement of our people, but the prison industrial complex that has used cannabis as a way to incarcerate our people. Our people deserve a right to that industry.
So that's against the amendment?
Yes.
Microphone 1. Is there anyone there speaking to the issue of cannabis?
No, we're here to speak to an amendment in general.
Okay. Just hold it right there. Other persons?
All of those people?
Okay. Don't we want to move on the cannabis one?
That's where you are.
Okay. Number 3. Microphone 3.
Yes. With all due respect to the young lady that's speaking that authored this, I think it is an affront to our people. It is a slap in the face to put cannabis in a reparations bill. That belongs in economic development. That has nothing to do with slavery. And we should not support this. And I'm asking for your support on that particular bullet point to have that deleted, perhaps move to economic development, but it has nothing to do with reparations.
Thank you, Delegate. Microphone number 2.
Yes, Alice Huffman from Sacramento State Conference. With all due respect to the gentleman, reparations is nothing but an economic proposal. And cannabis is economics, and it's new on the scene. It came from the whole, in our state and in other states, we make sure that cannabis is called out for rights to black people, for what they've suffered under listen, wait a minute, don't shake your head.
Delegates.
Speak to us. Talk to us, madam.
Oh yeah, all right. I'll look at you.
Delegates, let's be in order.
I simply want to reiterate that reparations is an economic issue, and cannabis is new on the scene, and black people are entitled to their share of the cannabis industry, and they're getting left out, and we should put cannabis in everything we can put cannabis in.
Thank you very much. Delegates, we have had 2 speeches in favor. We have had 2 comments in favor of the amendment. Sir, you can only speak twice. We have 2.
We'll come back to you on that.
Against. And so we are going to have you to vote on this amendment, on this cannabis amendment only.
Which is to remove, to
The
delete.
amendment is, delegates, listen to me. The amendment is to delete
The bullet point.
entitled Rights to the Cannabis Industry at the bottom of page 81. All those in favor of the amendment, raise your voting card.
Oh, in favor of the amendment. Oh, yeah, I don't care.
Delegates, you got to work with me. All of those in favor of deleting the amendment, raise your vote. Deleting the section.
The bullet point.
Delegates,
Pay
let me
attention.
do this. If you listen to me, I have all of this. Let me kind of handle this, and I think I can guide us through this. If you would look at the bottom of page 81, where it says rights to the cannabis industry, the amendment is to delete it. If you are in favor of deleting the amendment, raise your voting card. If you are opposed to the amendment, raise your voting card.
We're going to have a division of the House up in here.
Yes, a division of the House.
All right. So make them stand up.
Okay, tellers. Where are my tellers? Tellers. Tellers that were elected in the region, come down front. I want to see who they are. Thank you. Tellers.
That were
If you would
properly
go,
elected.
tellers that were elected at your region, please move quickly down front. Everybody else should be seated at this time. Everybody else should be seated with the exception of the tellers. Okay. Whenever I call for the vote, when I call for the vote to delete the
They ain't hear you.
I know it. Delegates, we are voting on the amendment to delete the bullet section at the bottom of page 81. We are voting on the amendment to delete rights to the cannabis industry, that section. If you are in favor of the amendment, please stand until the teller instructs you to be seated.
And the amendment is to delete.
And the amendment, you are voting on the amendment if you are in favor of deleting the section that says, the amendment is to delete rights to the delegates. The amendment is to delete rights to the cannabis industry bullet that starts at the bottom of page 81. If you are in favor of that, please stand until the teller counts you. That's that amendment only. That's not what your amendment said.
Yeah, it does. That's not what he said. But if he loses this one, he loses that one.
Yeah. Delegates, let's be in order and quickly do the count. Lanita, will you take the vote? Will you take the counts? All of those?
Now, don't call the other ones yet.
No.
Call your teller's return now that you did it that way.
Yeah. Because how else are you going to do it?
Do it by region.
Region 1. Region 1.
They're still counting.
Thank you. Region 2.
Tellers, stay here.
Region 3.
No. The amendment is to delete. No, the amendment is to delete.
Region 3. Region 3.
Region 1. Region 1 ready?
Okay.
23 no.
23 in favor.
23 in favor.
23 in favor. Region 2.
Region 3.
I'm sorry, Region 3 said what?
They're still counting.
They're
Region
still
4.
adding.
Region 4. Region 5.
What? 98. Region 3 is 98. Region 4 is 15. Region 4 is 15. And
So
what is
who we
Region
missing?
5?
Region 5.
They're over there.
They're counting. Region 6. Thank you. Region 7.
How many?
36. Which one? 38 is what I was given. This lady right here, Region 6. Region 5. Okay. Okay, delegates, those who are against deleting this amendment.
Stand. You got to tell them to stand up.
If you do not support,
You have to say stand up. You
I
didn't.
will. Please stand if you are against the amendment. Please stand. Oh, that's right. No. Is that how I did it?
No, you did it in favor of deletion.
Okay. If you oppose the amendment, please stand.
I don't know why that takes.
I don't know why they don't understand Delegates, didn't I say if you support the amendment?
That was if you are in favor.
If you oppose the amendment, please stand until you are counted by your tellers and be seated. This is a hot mess here. I don't know how else to drive the house if you don't. How would you run it? I couldn't tell though. What time is it?
11:27.
Region 1.
Don't worry about what's up here.
Right.
Count your own stuff out there.
Region 1.
Count your stuff out there.
Region 2. Region 3. Region 2's over there. Region 3. Region 4.
They're updating Region 1 again.
Region Region 1. We have Region 1. Region 2. Region 3. Region 4. Region 5. Oh, wow.
That ain't what I saw.
Region 6.
Somebody's still counting over here.
Which region are you? Region 3? Wait, Gina, would you let me? Region 3? 126, Region 3. Region 7? 20. Region 2?
You don't get counted in the region. You up here on the day. They're counting the day as separate. Now, pay attention and stop trying to do my job.
So what's the total?
We don't have Region 2 yet.
Region 2?
No. All right. So the vote was?
Delegates. How much? 496. To delete. Delegates, the votes were 496 in favor of deleting, 402 against deleting. So the section is deleted.
No. On the next amendment. On the second amendment.
Delegates.
No, just move on. The next amendment is by Rebecca Barnes. I think she's
Ms.
over
Barnes. No. Rebecca Raines.
Oh, he had amendments on page
Chicago
82.
West Side.
We'll come back to you. Region 2.
Microphone 2.
Talk.
Hello? Hi.
Are you Ms. Raines?
I am Rebecca Raines from Chicago West Side Branch.
Okay. She presented an amendment.
You present your amendment.
Oh, I wanted to create a new whereas that supports this resolution with some new research that has come out on the topic, specifically in Chicago. So we're adding a whereas in the on page 82 at the very bottom, going into page 83 at this point, that speaks of an article called "The Plunder of Black Wealth in Chicago," that adds more support to the contract selling crisis that in 2019 dollars would be worth $3 to $4 billion due to the Black community in Chicago. It mimics what has occurred in urban communities nationwide, but is most
So it's a new whereas.
shown in Chicago from the contract selling that occurred in the 50s and 60s.
So it would
So
be
that
the
amendment is,
final whereas.
then my amendment is that that portion be added to this resolution.
We have the amendment. Would this be, where do you want this added?
It's the
Is
final
the final
whereas.
whereas?
Yes.
Is it the final whereas?
No, it's not the final whereas. This is the second to final whereas.
So it goes in here.
Okay. So it would be after the bullet point, social services?
Yes, where
Under
it's shown
that
on
one.
the screen.
Gotcha.
So it's to add a new whereas clause.
This amendment was made in agreement to the author.
Okay. Is there anyone that cares to speak against the amendment? The committee does not.
The committee does not support it because they don't believe it's national in scope.
It's not national in scope. It is it's the primary example of what happened across the nation as is stated in the amendment. So it happened probably most prevalently in Chicago, but it was mirrored across the country. Chicago is probably the, as we so often are, the model for taking advantage of Black people and redlining, contract selling. It was the model. I read a whole book on it for what happened across the nation in urban areas.
No. So you need to move. Is there other?
Are there other persons
that want to speak?
that want to speak to this amendment?
This amendment.
This amendment.
This
If you go down further on, it does speak to other, it says as an example nationwide, but we can cut off the part Chicago if that makes it seem like it's only in Chicago.
Ms. Raines, you've spoken already. Are there other persons that would like to speak to that? Microphone 4.
Helen Settles, Staten Island, New York, former social studies teacher, and what the young lady said is exactly right. It may have initiated in Chicago, but it went throughout the Midwest. It went to Oklahoma. It went to several states in which Blacks were established and had wealth, and it was plundered and taken from them. I said it should be in there because it did start. It may have started in Chicago, but it went across the United States. She's absolutely right.
Thank you, delegate. Other delegates? Delegate at microphone 3.
Gina Bird, Fort Worth, Texas, 6178. I am also a Chicago native, and I agree with the young lady, Southside Black Belt. That's where all our history came from. They did do that. It's a part of gentrification, so it was replicated across the states. We're seeing that in Texas. I experienced it in Arizona, so I do agree with the young lady. As a native of Chicago, it did start there, so we need to have that in there.
Microphone 5. Microphone 5.
Yes. Juan Cofield from the New England Area Conference. This is an editorial comment, and I hope that it will be taken when these are prepared for the National Board. Every time in this resolution, in these resolutions in which we are referring to Black people, let's spell Black with a capital B.
Thank you.
That has nothing to do with the subject.
Okay.
Anybody?
Any person standing at the microphone that would like to speak to this amendment?
We've had several for it, so we need somebody.
We've
in
had, if
opposition.
you're standing to support the amendment, we've already had those. If you are against the amendment, microphone 3.
Hi, my name is Beverly Perry, and I'm from the Grosse Pointe Harper Woods NAACP 33AA. And the only thing that I would like to agree with her about is taking out Chicago, because it was nationwide, and with the gentleman with capitalizing black. Thank you.
Microphone 4. Is there anyone at microphone 2 that wants to speak to this amendment in opposition to the amendment?
In opposition.
Opposition. Microphone 2.
You understand the word opposition, right?
Yes, I'm going to frame it accordingly. That because of the fact that Chicago, the District of Columbia, Cleveland, every urban community in the country was impacted this way, that we should amend to include the words urban, to exclude Chicago and insert all urban communities.
That's an amendment to the amendment. Are you making a motion to amend the amendment?
Yes.
Bring it forward.
We'll have to write it.
We knew.
You have to
Okay.
do that. Thank you. Microphone 4.
Hello.
Microphone 4.
Hello. Greetings from Beaumont, Texas. Michael Cooper, psychologist and pastor. We're dealing with this currently in Texas after Hurricane Harvey, in Port Arthur, Texas, in Galveston, Texas. We have these kind of issues, so if we need to delete the word Chicago, the state Chicago, this is happening. As a social studies teacher just spoke earlier, this is absolutely happening. And if we forget this, we're going backwards. We digress. So I'm asking that you keep it the way it is. Just get rid of the state Chicago and capitalize the word black, and we'll be good to go.
Okay, that was another speech in favor of the amendment.
Now,
Are
the
there
motion
any
on the floor
persons?
is to amend the amendment.
The motion on the floor. No.
Yeah.
Okay. Question has been called.
What's the motion?
No. What is your question? What are you calling
No,
the question on?
The issue is on this.
Wait a minute,
on the
he called the
substitute.
question though. What was the question called?
He just stopped in debate. So the issue, we are currently on the amendment to the amendment.
I got that. I got that. So the issue that we will be voting on first is the amendment to the amendment.
You've got to talk into the mic.
The issue that we will be voting on first is the amendment to the amendment.
To say all urban communities.
The amendment to the amendment is to say all urban communities, delete Chicago or any other reference to a city. That's what you'll be voting on. All in favor of deleting Chicago and inserting all urban communities, raise your voting card. Those opposed? The amendment to the amendment is adopted. Now we go to the...
On the amendment as amended.
On the thing is
On the amendment as amended.
On the amendment as amended. And what the hell is that?
To add this as a new section.
Okay. On the amendment as amended.
Which will add
as Professor Russell is helping me to understand, this is the amendment that was stated by Ms. Raines, that is to insert the language of
and include black.
And in the last section of whereas, and we would insert the language that was given. If you need us to read that, we can have someone to read it. But you can see it up there. All those in favor on the amendment as amended. Microphone 2.
I'd just like to point out that that's a quote directly from the article. So if you cut out the word Chicago, you're going to have to take the quotations off.
We'll take the quotations off. Other questions? All those in favor of the amendment as amended, raise your voting card. Those opposed? The amendment as amended has passed.
All right, now go back to Felder. He has a second amendment on the same page. Felder.
Microphone 3.
Okay, the second part of my amendment was on page 82, the $600,000 payment. You know, I think the most important thing that we need to focus on as a people when we talk about reparations is where we have been denied, where we need assistance. And I would say housing, medical care, economic development, as opposed to just looking for a check. I do not believe that Congress is going to write a $600,000 check for every African American in this country. I just don't believe it. So if we do something that we need to look at sustainability, what is going to sustain us as a people? And I think that economic development, housing, medical care, education, and I'd like to change the $600,000 to those sustainable issues that we have problems with. Medical treatment, housing, economic development, those things are going to be more sustainable for us, our children, and our grandchildren.
What it is.
So what is your motion?
That is my motion, to change the $600,000.
No, what you submitted up here says to delete the reference to $600,000 payment. That's all it says.
Okay, then I want to change my amendment to make sure that we change the $600,000. I'm on the floor.
What you have
so
submitted,
do you need
what
me to
you
change it?
what submitted in accordance with the rules simply says.
Hey folks, Roland Martin here, joining us live at the NAACP 110th Annual Convention here in Detroit is Derek Johnson, President and CEO of the NAACP. Derek, always good to see you.
Good to see you.
So
Thank you for being here.
So first of all, what's happening right now is first of all, there are many resolutions that take place here, about 150 or so. So reparations is a part of this. There are people out there who say, well, NAACP, take a stand on reparations. They have. Can you explain it?
It's funny. From the very beginning of Congressman John Conyers introducing House Bill 40, I think in 1972, NAACP has been in support of the position of reparations, particularly the position of a study to understand how reparations should be dealt with in this nation. We were on the forefront of the conversation before it became a national conversation. So for those who say, why don't we take a stand, we've already taken a stand. We've taken a stand perhaps before many of them were even born.
Well, that's what's happening right now. And so we want to ask you that. Well, let's just talk about tying that also a black agenda, because it was very interesting. I had a conversation with some folks who said that there's some people who talked about the idea that, well, we really haven't had a black agenda. And I said, okay, if you read a book, go read about Clarence Mitchell, the book called The 101st Senator. You even go further back. You could talk about A. Philip Randolph. You've had consistent. First of all, you go back to Robert Abbott, Chicago defendant. I mean, we can go on and on and on. I mean, the reality is you had black folks presenting a black agenda for centuries.
It's not a new phenomenon that individuals making noise about the need for a position that covers all black folks. The problem with that notion, we're not a monolith. But also understanding our history, we've always had organizations that were representative bodies like the NAACP, where individuals come from across the country. For us, it's 2,200 units in 47 states that come together and vote on our policies, positions, and priorities. You have other organizations, you have fraternities, you have sororities that adopt positions. And if you look at all the positions our organizations adopt, you take away much of the semantics and some nuances, we're all saying the same thing. That's our agenda. It has been that way ever since the Black Convention of '72. It has been that when people align behind either Booker T. Washington or Du Bois. Those are all black agendas or positions around policy issues. The real question is, stop having arguments about the ancillary and the vehicles and get involved with the substance and pushing for the outcomes.
Yeah, and that's the key, because again, there have been presentation of black agendas, but then after the election is over, how do folks then mobilize and organize to actually make it happen? I raised the point of Clarence Mitchell. Many people have no idea who he was. But when it came to civil rights legislation, you had people who were out there who were marching. You had people out there who were protesting. But there had to be somebody who was in D.C. walking the halls of Congress, literally meeting with people, going over language. That's what his job is. And so that's the dirty work of policy. You can't just say, demand it from a candidate. Are you going to be there after they win every day? Every day pushing, and when one little word is changed, no, you're fighting over that word. That's what people, I think, don't understand about how it becomes reality.
You know, it is also one of these problems we have with the notion of an egocentric model of leadership. Everyone is looking for, not everyone, many people are looking for that charismatic personality who puts together this big event, this march, this demonstration, this protest. Those are our vehicles to get to the outcome, so we cannot lose sight of the outcome. And the outcome is the nuance. It's to work in the dark. It's walking the halls. It's staying focused on how do policy move, how do change happen, and how we collectively work towards that change, not the rhetoric.
And of course, you're going to have a presidential forum, and I take it's going to be one-on-one. Yes. So not all of them on stage.
Right.
How much time will each person get? It's going to take place tomorrow. We'll be live streaming it right here in Roland Martin Unfiltered. So walk us through how that is actually going to take place.
So we decided to go from having individuals speaking at our podium and speaking to their campaign talking points to having a true moderated conversation with April Ryan, so we can get to the substance of the issues that we want to hear collectively as NAACP, specifically, but issues as it relates to the black community. Because why should we surrender our stage for rhetoric, for campaign speech? Let's get to the heart of the matter.
So how much time for each one?
So you asked me the details I don't know. That's
got it.
Okay, got it. That's why we're NA3 with a staff, right? All right. But I think it'll be, there's not enough time for any one candidate. So I'm thinking about 20 to 30 minutes per candidate, but don't hold me to that because I don't know.
So obviously Senator Kamala Harris is going to be here.
Yes.
Mayor Pete Buttigieg.
He decided to come.
Will Senator Bernie Sanders be here?
Yeah, he will be here.
Vice President Joe Biden.
He will be here.
Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Elizabeth Warren will be here.
And who else? Did I miss anybody?
Cory Booker will be here.
Senator Cory Booker. Okay.
Castro will be here.
Okay.
The former governor of Massachusetts, running as a Republican, will be here as well.
Weld.
Weld will be here. Yes. So it's a full bevy of candidates coming before our delegates to talk about the issues that are of concern with us and how they would address those issues.
Now, the NAACP did invite Donald Trump.
Yes.
That was back and forth. My understanding is that he was interested in coming to speak if there were no questions.
That's correct.
And the NAACP said no.
That's correct.
You're going to get asked questions.
Yes.
Is that what took place?
So, we have invited the sitting president every year that we've convened our delegates, 110 years. We opened up the forum. We invited President Trump last year. We invited him when he was a nominee on the Republican ticket. But this year, we decided to change the format. We want to make sure we can get to the substance of the conversation and not the rhetoric of the conversation. And that wasn't about him, that was about everybody. So initially, we looked at Wednesday as an opportunity. They came back to us after 5 months of not hearing anything and decided to let us know they were interested in coming, but Wednesday wouldn't work. Fine. Could we do something early in the week? They came back, they asked for Sunday, said, well, that's not an option. So we narrowed down to Tuesday. And because Tuesday was a place that we could fix the agenda, and then we said it would be a moderated conversation. Well, no, we want to come back on Wednesday. You can't come on Wednesday now because we've populated that schedule. So you got Tuesday as a moderated conversation. And once they found out that, they said, well, We don't want to do that. We want to have the original conversation of him coming and presenting to the delegates. I said, well, that's not an option because he's now a candidate, and we're treating all the candidates the same. The only deviation we're going to do for you is allow you to come Tuesday and not Wednesday.
So what you're saying is that because it's a presidential election and he's already announced his running, even though he is the sitting president, you're treating him as a candidate, saying, okay, if you come, you have to abide by the rules of the other candidates where you were asked questions. So let's say it was last year. It was you in San Antonio. He wasn't a candidate. That would have been a traditional speech.
It could have been, right?
Gotcha.
If we decided to allow that type of format.
Got it.
You know, we are obligated, and I think it's necessary for us to extend across political party lines and especially to the sitting president. But we're not obligated to have any particular format because it's our stage.
Right.
And we're going to control our stage. And because this particular president has yet showed the discipline not to use the microphone for a political purpose, we will continue to hold him to a standard of a moderated conversation.
Well, look, I'm on the board of the National Association of Black Journalists. Whenever we invite president or even any candidates, minority journalism organizations who ask them questions.
Right.
And so that's the deal. So, if you're going to come, not just give a speech, and that's how it is. There were some people, Joe Madison has said that NAACP should disinvite Donald Trump. There are others who said, why in the world would you invite him to come to the convention? Why extend the invitation?
But, it is something that we do out of our IRS obligation. We're a nonpartisan organization. We don't support political parties or candidates. It is something we do because our delegates and the community should hear from all points of view when it comes to public policy considerations. It is part of what we do because, no permanent friends, no permanent enemies. We've had good support from Tim Scott. But we don't agree with Tim Scott on everything. But when it came down to certain judicial nominees, like Thomas Farr, it was Tim Scott who stood up in his blackness and was still with us to vote against individuals like Tom Farr. So for us, we use this forum so we can hear perspectives. But at the same time, we're not going to surrender the stage for someone who's proven to be undisciplined with the microphone, stay on message, and not go off script, and use our stage for his political hate speech.
This is the second convention for you now as president. You talked earlier about not being sort of the egocentric leader where it's sort of like this is the one person. And in fact, I think I'll say this. In fact, that was sort of evidence yesterday. So yesterday, normally, I know in past years, NAACP president sort of created a major speech. Yesterday, Speaker Pelosi spoke, Congressman Rashida Tlaib, and then you came on after them.
That's correct.
And in fact, it was a packed house when they were here. Then a lot of people took off for lunch.
Yes.
And so, talk about that form of leadership, but also restructuring the organization with your 22 branches. Talk about how that has gone and how it has sort of changed the NAACP to get ready for 2020.
So for me, and I come out of a different type of tradition, if we build institutions to last, those institutions will be there when we need them. But if we center institutions around personalities, when the personalities go away, we see these big, sharp ebbs and flow. We see that right now with SCLC, unfortunately. It was built around personalities, and over time, we begin to see it subside. Institutions across the country, black and white, are now they're not what they used to be. People don't join like they used to. So for us, in my leadership, I'm looking at how do we build our internal capacity to respond timely to the interests and needs of African Americans? How do we build our infrastructure so no matter who's in place, it will continue? How do we build in our fundraising strategy to ensure that we're not dependent on any particular sector outside of our membership dollars? That's what's most important. The vehicle of the NAACP for 110 years, if every person alive would renew their membership today, we would supersede our budget by over $20 million. That's important to know. But because over time we didn't zero in on our infrastructure, maintaining and updating how we function, we have lost some of that. My goal is to rebuild that. Because when I'm out of this seat, I want this organization to be healthy and alive and prospering, not based on the individual, but based on the will of the people that collectively make up our membership.
One of the things that, again, we talk about infrastructure. Yesterday in your speech, you talked about these black political machines, these groups that existed where when you had mayors and others and people along those lines. And you talked about how we've lost that. I have been yelling for years. When I talk about Divine Nine, I spoke to the Deltas this year. I talked about how we have infrastructure. If you look at black churches, especially those with hierarchy, AME Zion, different churches that have hierarchy. And it's amazing to me how people don't understand why infrastructure matters.
You know, I grew up here in Detroit, right? I understand the value of a political machine. I can recall there was an individual running for governor, and it was in the early 80s. And his whole stunt was he was going to be the governor to put the mayor of the city of Detroit in his place. The mayor of the city of Detroit was Coleman Young. Coleman Young had a true machine. He took him on the challenge. And on election day, every city vehicle that had gas in it drove up and down the street, pushing people out to the polls, including garbage trucks, had big signs on the side, "Go vote today." When the election was over, that particular candidate was defeated by far because of the huge increase of turnout in the city of Detroit. Coleman Young's response was, I guess I was the mayor of the city of Detroit that's sitting there want to be governor back home. That's political power. That's political infrastructure. If we had that, then we could grow more jobs for black folks. We can demand more equity in contracting. We can ensure that all the things that we want and need as a community, we can have. But unfortunately, we've had many people to get successful, get the contracts, leave out of the cities to the suburbs, and the very thing that got them the money to do it, they no longer have a political voice in, and now they're not getting the contracts anymore, i.e. Atlanta, i.e. D.C., i.e. Harlem, i.e. Detroit.
Philadelphia.
We can go down, Gary, Indiana. That is the loss of political infrastructure, and that loss of political infrastructure means the loss of jobs, a loss of contracts, entrepreneurship. We can ill afford to continue to go down that path.
Last question for you, and that is looking for the 2020. And again, there was a drop, 2.4% drop of black voters in 2016 from who voted for it with Obama in 2012. What is absolutely needed to get folks to understand why that vote absolutely matters and how it must be, folks must be registered, but it must be mobilized and organized, because you can register folks to vote, but then if you get them to the polls,
yes,
that means you just register them to vote.
So this convention kicks off our work for 2020. We're starting now for 2020 election. We've got a data scientist in place. We've identified what we call low propensity voters. These are individuals who are registered to vote and not voting. If we bump that needle 1.5%, 2%, 3% in targeted areas, we win every election that we think we should win, bar none. These are African Americans, because we don't have to tell African Americans how to vote. We're going to vote the way we need to in terms of our interests.
Right.
But on top of that, we're asking people to text to the number 40649 WIN.
WIN.
40649 WIN. And once you text it, you sign up. We're going to tell you the 10 people in your immediate neighborhood who are registered to vote, but they don't vote, and we need to get them out. And some people are going to be shocked because it's going to be their neighbor, it's going to be their child or their husband, because in this relational organizing model that we're doing, it's not based on a personality, it's not based on the event, it's based on neighbor talking to neighbor, family talking to neighbor to go to the polls, and we've purchased and built out the technology, one of our infrastructure fix, to identify who that is.
All right. Well, so looking forward to that.
All right.
Derek, thanks a bunch.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you. Oh, well, am I clear?
Yeah, we're clear. We're clear.
Tuition, all of those, you have those amendments here. We are now ready to vote on the amendment. And to replace it with free tuition for blacks. And we want to, the amendment is to wipe out the $600,000 and replace it with free tuition and erasing student debt. That is the
His amendment was to wipe out student debt and replace it with free tuition for
he was
all
supposed to bring
blacks.
it up here.
No, wipe out the $600,000 and to replace it for free tuition for all blacks. That's what his amendment.
That's what I just said.
You said debt.
I didn't say debt. She said debt.
Now, but Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, if we put before these people all of the resolves that we have in
All right.
one swoop.
Madam Chair, Madam Chair, Madam Chair, I move that we suspend consideration of this resolution while we look at all of the amendments which have been submitted, consolidate them, and bring it back to the floor for consideration.
Moved and properly seconded that we suspend discussion on this resolution and bring it back later for after we review all of the amendments. All of those in favor, raise your voting card. Those opposed, thank you very much.
All right, so it will come back later. Ooh. So that was the only one that had any issue in this section, right? We're moving then to voting rights. Moving to voting rights. Resolutions in this section are the NAACP reaffirms its support for the voting rights for all and lifting up pro-voter solutions, and number 2, expanding the electorate by giving youth a voice in their future, and number 3, abolishing prison-based gerrymandering. Do we have any amendments on any of those? Is this on this? That's reparations. Okay.
Is that reparations? Is that reparations?
There are no amendments on any of these resolutions, Madam Chair. Therefore, I move adoption of the entire voting rights packet.
Moved and properly seconded. All those in favor, raise your voting card. Those opposed, resolutions are adopted. Next. All right, you've been good. You've been real good. Let's hang on in there a little bit longer. Freedom is not free. Which other ones we got?
The emergency is coming.
Okay, please be in place. We have an emergency resolution coming. We need to have you to vote on that. We need you to vote on the emergency resolution. You don't want to miss it.
Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, earlier this morning you heard Representative Al Green speak to the subject of what? What? The motion, you heard Congressman Al Green of Texas speak to a resolution calling for the impeachment of the president. That resolution has been submitted to you as an emergency resolution. Do you all have copies of the emergency resolution? Who does not have copies? They were distributed earlier. You have copies. Yeah. All right. This is a I'm going to read this in its entirety, so this is going to take a minute. Read along with me. Read along with me, please. Whereas the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People upholds the bedrock principle no one is above the law, and whereas the Constitution of the United States of America is the supreme law of the land, and whereas Article 2, Section 4 of the United States Constitution states, the President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. And whereas in his capacity as President of the United States, unmindful of the high duties of his office, of the dignity and proprieties thereof, and of the harmony and respect necessary for stability within the society of the United States, Donald John Trump has, with his bigoted statements, done more than simply insult individuals and groups of Americans. He has harmed the American society by attempting to convert and by converting his bigoted statements into United States policy, and by associating the presidency and the people of the United States with bigotry on one or more occasions, and whereas on January 27, 2017, Donald John Trump issued Executive Order 13769, providing for a partial shutdown of immigration from mainly Muslim countries to fulfill a bigoted campaign promise that read as follows: Donald J. Trump Statement on Preventing Muslim Immigration, New York. Donald John December 7th, 2015, Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what's going on, thereby attempting to convert a bigoted campaign promise into United States policy, associating the presidency and the people of the United States with bigotry, thereby casting contempt upon Muslims, inciting hate and hostility, and sowing discord among the people of the United States on the basis of religion. And whereas on July 26, 2017, Donald John Trump made a public statement substantially as follows: after consulting with my generals and military experts, please be advised that the United States government will not accept or allow transgender individuals to serve in any capacity in the U.S. military. Our military must be focused on decisive and overwhelming victory and cannot be burdened with the tremendous medical cost and disruption that transgender in the military would entail, thereby attempting to convert his bigoted statement into United States policy, associating the presidency and the people of the United States with bigotry, thereby casting contempt on transgender individuals, inciting hate and hostility, and sowing discord among the people of the United States on the basis of gender. And whereas on August 15, 2017, Donald John Trump made a widely published statement characterizing a group of anti-Semites, bigots, racists, white nationalists, and Ku Klux Klansmen who rallied in Charlottesville, Virginia, as very fine people, thereby associating the presidency and the people of the United States with bigotry. And whereas on October 7, 2017, hate groups returned to Charlottesville, Virginia at the statue of Robert E. Lee, the Confederate general, chanting, "You will not replace us," after having chanted in their August Charlottesville rally, "Jews will not replace us." Since this event on October 7th, the President has made widely published statements about many issues, including the National Football League, but has not made one widely published statement condemning the hate groups for returning to the place where an innocent person lost her life at the hands of hate. And whereas on January 11, 2018, Donald John Trump held a meeting with a bipartisan group of congressional leaders that focused primarily on legislation that would provide a statutory protected status for individuals brought to the United States without documentation. At this meeting, as has been widely published, Donald John Trump made references to people from shithole countries. He also questioned why we need more Haitians or people from African countries, proclaiming that we should take them out. Donald John Trump then suggested that Norwegians were better suited to be immigrants to this country, thereby casting contempt on citizens and non-citizens who were welcomed here by previous presidents due to natural disaster and civil unrest, thereby attempting to convert his bigoted statements into United States policy. Associating the presidency and the people of the United States with bigotry, inciting hate and hostility, and sowing discord among the people of the United States on the basis of national origin. Whereas it has been widely reported that in April 2018, the United States Justice Department commenced a zero-tolerance policy requiring all cases of unlawful entry into the United States to be prosecuted, causing thousands of children to be separated from their parents without a prudent plan to reunite all of the said children with their parents. And notwithstanding Donald John Trump having signed an executive order to end the family separation at the border in June 2018, many children have not been united with their parents as of July 22nd, 2019. And whereas the House of Representatives on July 16, 2019, strongly condemned President Donald John Trump's racist comments that have legitimized and increased fear and hatred of new Americans and people of color by saying that our fellow Americans who are immigrants and those who may look to the president like immigrants should go back to other countries, referring to immigrants and asylum seekers as invaders, and by saying that members of Congress who are immigrants or those of our colleagues who are wrongly assumed to be immigrants do not belong to Congress or the United States of America. Therefore, be it resolved that Donald John Trump is unfit to be president, is unfit to represent the American values of decency and morality, respectability and civility, honesty and propriety, reputability and integrity, is unfit to defend the ideals that have made America great, is unfit to defend liberty and justice for all as extolled in the Pledge of Allegiance, is unfit to defend American ideal of all persons being created equal as exalted in the Declaration of Independence, is unfit to ensure domestic tranquility, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity as lauded in the preamble of the United States Constitution, is unfit to protect government of the people, by the people, for the people, as included in the Gettysburg Address, and be it further resolved that the aforementioned Donald John Trump has by his statements brought the high office of the President of the United States in contempt, ridicule, disgrace, and disrepute, has sown seeds of discord among the people of the United States, has demonstrated that he is unfit to be president, and has betrayed the trust of the as President of the United States to manifest injury of the people of the United States, and has committed a high misdemeanor in office. Be it finally resolved that Donald John Trump, by causing such harm to the society of the United States, is unfit to be president and warrants impeachment, trial, and removal from office. Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, I would move adoption of the resolution.
Moved and properly second. Microphone 3. Microphone 3.
Madam Chair, my name is Reverend Franklin Breckenridge, Esquire, from the state of Indiana.
Yes, sir.
Delegate here. I'm former National Board member, former Vice Chairman of the National Board of Directors. I rise to second the nomination. I wanted to first it, but I didn't get that chance. I want to second it, and I would like to say that this convention could do nothing more, if it does nothing else, should by all means adopt this resolution and see that it is immediately forward to the Congressman Allen so it can get in the records of this Congress and support the impeachment of this man who should never be and never will be my president, but should never have been the president of the United States of America. And I rise to second this resolution for those reasons. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Microphone 1.
Craig Ali, Santa Monica, Venice. And although I support this resolution in its entirety, I want to draw particular attention to the whereas on January 11th and the final whereas. And with all due respect to Mr. Green, I don't think this goes far enough. This man has created, quote unquote, war crimes. Children have died in his custody. The NAACP, if indeed they adopt this resolution, should head up some sort of commission with other civil rights groups and take him to World Court, the Geneva Convention. If nothing else but that.
Thank you very much. Microphone 1.
Stephon Witherspoon from Duluth, Minnesota, president in the St. Paul branch. We want to add to this resolution to condemn the singling out of the U.S. reps, Rashida Tlaib, Ayanna Pressley, Ilhan Omar, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Please add that to the resolution.
I just want to add
Did you bring that? Do we have that, sir?
We're going to put it in. I want to add to that also.
Thank you. Microphone 1.
I'm the president of Unit 4052, St. Paul, Minnesota, President Raheel Khalif. I'm also here with my brother, Stephon, from Duluth, Minnesota, to condemn our president to singling out our sisters Ilhan Omar, who happen to be immigrant, African, and also from Minnesota. And not only Ilhan, but all 4 single out African and minority women congresswomen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Microphone 6.
I stand in Shirley Ribbon Smith from Washington, D.C., 7001. I put a motion together to condemn President Trump. I stand in support of this motion that we can indict President Trump, impeach President Trump, and I think that as we move forward, we need to have a committee to come together of people across this country to support us before it goes back to Congress again.
Thank you very much. Microphone 7. Seeing no other persons at the mic, we do have an amendment. Board Member Jefferson.
Where are we?
No, right here. Microphone 2.
Lisa Haley, Illinois State Conference President. I'm opposed to adding those individuals' names because today it may be them, but tomorrow it may be us.
Okay. You know what? I think I made a mess up. No, we had the discussion going. Okay. Yeah.
All right. So
Okay.
we've got 3 amendments. Is one of these yours? No.
Yeah. Okay, we have 3 amendments in addition to we take those as comments. We have 3 amendments that were given that will be presented.
Okay, so.
By the chair. Mr. Jefferson, we'll ask Mr. Jefferson to give his amendment first, and then we'll ask.
All right. Thank you. My name is Howard Jefferson from Houston, Texas, and I'm proud, very proud to state to you that I was a campaign manager for Congressman Green when he ran for Congress. Give me a hand. Give me a hand. All right. I want to thank President Johnson. President Johnson called me and says, I need Congressman Al Green's phone number. I said, hey, what you doing?
he says we got to support him. So I want to read an addition there. I don't know whether it's an amendment or whether it's an addition.
Any addition is an amendment.
Okay, whatever y'all say, y'all do this. Y'all. Therefore, this is what is to be added. Therefore, be it resolved that the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People go on record in supporting Congressman Al Green and his effort to impeach President Donald Trump.
I don't think there's any objection to that.
Okay.
No objection to that.
No objection. The committee accepts that. We have, our general counsel has an amendment that he would like to speak to.
Yeah, we do with your part. Yeah.
Yeah, you do.
You do. You can sit down. You can sit down.
Mr. Chair and delegates, the NAACP was founded, as you all know, on the notion that you don't convict and punish somebody before there has been a trial. With that in mind, what I've proposed and what has been formally submitted is that we strike the language from the penultimate resolve clause and has committed a high misdemeanor in office, because that is what would be determined after a trial. Also, in the final resolve clause, I propose striking the language that comes after trial so that it would read, be it finally resolved that Donald John Trump, by causing such harm to the society of the United States, is unfit to be president and warrants impeachment and trial. What would happen to him as a result of that trial should be left to the process.
Okay, moved and so the committee accepts that.
The committee accepts.
Committees accept.
Committee accepts the amendments.
Okay, any other amendments?
There. Hold on. There is one more amendment here.
You have an amendment?
Madam Chair, there's one more amendment here which speaks to basically the grammatical and linguistic efforts which was made. So we're going to take care of the items that are on here for the delegate from Muncie.
Okay. Recognize microphone 5.
This is Scott X. Esdale from the state of Connecticut. And if you all are recognizing names, I just want to make sure we definitely consider the queen of the Congressional Black Caucus, Maxine Waters, who was fighting against the president way before all of the others.
Thank you very much. Microphone 3.
Yes, Amber Stocks from Muncie, Indiana.
I just said that.
And I was the one who submitted the resolution to pay attention to the parenthetical phrases and linguistic grammatical.
We accepted.
We accept that.
Also, on my resolution, included deleting on the fourth whereas the statement on the fourth line that says, done more than simply insult individuals and groups of Americans. And I propose deleting that because when our next Black or person of color comes in the Oval Office, he or she may at some point insult another American, and using language that may insult someone is just very broad, and I wouldn't want that to be used against Kamala Harris or whoever is next in the Oval.
Where is that? Committee?
I think it's the fourth.
Okay. Committee accepts.
To delete, simply insult individuals? Okay.
She said she sent an amendment. Question has been called. cut off debate on the emergency resolution. All those in favor, raise your voting card. Those opposed? Debate is cut. Debate has ended. We're now voting on the emergency resolution as amended. All those in favor, raise your voting card. All those opposed? The chair declares that this resolution has passed unanimously. Yeah. I believe we have all of them except that one.
We've done them all.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Except, wait a minute now. We got to come back to the one we got to.
I know that.
Okay.
Sisters and brothers, we've done our work here with the exception of one resolution that we still have to we're working on, and we hope to bring back to you, and that's the resolution on reparations. If we can get that one done, our work here will be done. If we do not get that resolution completed, then we will have to take it up tomorrow or later today. So if you just hang with us a little bit, we'll try to get it to you. Please listen to this announcement, delegates. Delegates, please listen to this announcement. Voting for election of the board member at the convention is being held in Hall C, Section 600, from 11 o'clock a.m. until 5 o'clock p.m. Please go and vote. The voting for the election of the board member at the convention is being held in Hall C, Section 600, from 11 a.m. until 5 p.m. Please go and vote, and this comes from the Election Supervisory Committee. Thank you.
Delegates, don't leave. You have another resolution that you did not complete. I instructed that that resolution be completed. So, what I want to do, in the interest of time, is I am going to have the chairman of the scholarship committee present the scholarship report while we work on the resolution, and then we're going to come back to that and complete our work. So if you will give Ms. Saloa Steele your attention and watch the screens, she will present these scholarships.
Thank you, Chairman Russell. Good morning, NAACP delegates and friends. Good morning, NAACP delegates and friends.
Can we have order?
I trust that you have had a wonderful and productive NAACP convention experience here in Detroit. Detroit, you have been outstanding hosts, so thank you. Can we give them a hand? Okay. The NAACP works to ensure that all disadvantaged students and students of color are on the path to college of a successful career. We are dedicated to eliminating the severe racial inequities that continue to plague our education system. Each year, the NAACP, through generous donations, is able to provide scholarships to outstanding students. Our dedicated scholarship committee determines the most outstanding individuals to receive these awards. This year, I had the privilege of having some of my committee here join me on stage. They work very, very hard to make sure that we are doing our due diligence in awarding these outstanding students. So thank you, committee, for joining me this morning. On behalf of the Education Committee Chair, Adora Obi-Nwezi, and the NAACP Scholarship Committee members, Diedrich Doolin, Ingrid Ellaby, James Gallman, Audrey Hooper, Howard Jefferson, Peter Rose, Miranda and Henry. Thank you again, and it gives us great pleasure to present this year's NAACP scholarships. Before I announce those scholarships, I'd also like to acknowledge the Poise Foundation, who administers the NAACP scholarships for us and do an outstanding job in making sure that we are going through over 100 or more scholarships to make them ready for us to present an award. So thank you, Poise Foundation. And Karis Jackson, Chief Operating Officer of the Poise Foundation. Thank you, Karis Jackson. The NAACP scholarships were endowed by two generous NAACP supporters, Agnes Jones Johnson and Hubertus W.V. Willems. The Agnes Jones Jackson Scholarship was established in the memory of the late Agnes Jones Jackson, who was a longtime NAACP member from the San Francisco branch. The Hubertus W.V. Willems Scholarship for male students is awarded annually to a male U.S. citizen who attends an accredited institution in the United States and is majoring in one of the following fields: engineering, chemistry, physics, or mathematical sciences. This year, we have the privilege to award 46 students. So without further delay, let's show who those students are.
Hey folks, Roland Martin here, broadcasting live from the NAACP's 110th annual convention here in Detroit, where just a few moments ago the NAACP unanimously passed a resolution supporting the one presented by Congressman Al Green to impeach Donald Trump that took place just a few moments ago. Now, right before that, we were interviewing Derek Johnson, of course, the president of the NAACP. There was a discussion about the NAACP's resolution dealing with the issue of reparations. And as a part of that was you heard them talk about including in this language dealing with cannabis. Well, the person who wanted that to be in the resolution is joining me right now. First of all, your name, where you from?
Jasmine Morton. I'm from DuPage, Illinois.
All right, so first, for folks who don't know, so explain exactly what you wanted to be included in the resolution.
So within the resolution for reparations, I wanted rights to the cannabis industry for the African American community, similar to that of Native Americans' rights to the casino industry. I thought that that would be a wonderful effort in this multi-million, if not billion-dollar industry for our people to have a stake in it.
But so then there was a gentleman who stood up who actually was against that, and I don't think, so here's what I think happened. I think he was believing that what you presented was somehow diluting the resolution. What you actually were saying, just correct me if I'm wrong, what you actually were saying was that there's no one thing called reparations. There are multiple things. So, for instance, when the men who were brutally beaten, confessions in Chicago by Commander John Burge, more than $40 million that was passed by the Chicago City Council, that was called reparations.
Yes.
So what you were saying that this is another form of reparations.
Absolutely.
Is that correct?
Absolutely. It's a multi-pronged approach to a stimulus package for the African American community. We need rights to the cannabis industry. It needs to be a financial payment to our people. It needs to be in the form of social services for our people. I don't think we can ask for just one single thing because so many things have happened to our people.
And we talk about cannabis. We talk about that industry. I know for a fact that it was like with Maryland, there was only one African American who was a dispensary. The bill was actually held up in New York because the black state legislators were saying, no, we need to guarantee that African Americans are receiving a fair share if we're going to actually pass this. We're talking about now that's more than a $300 billion industry. White folks are making money left and right. African Americans went to jail. Some people are still in jail.
Yes, indeed.
Because they were arrested dealing with marijuana, dealing with weed. And so now, so you're having black legislators who are actually doing what you're talking about, saying, no, you want us to pass this, there needs to be guarantees in it for the group that was most affected by it when it was illegal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm an attorney in Illinois. My fight for my people within the NAACP is fighting for our rights economically, politically, socially. And that's what my effort was with this reparations resolution. I think that if we aim low, if we aim for the floor, that's all we'll get.
So so you were including in that. I totally understand that.
Mm-hmm.
But how about a separate resolution that speaks to just the cannabis industry? Because again, as I was listening to it, I think that's actually what happened.
Mm-hmm.
I think the audience totally misunderstood
I agree.
what you were trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
They thought it was like a bait and switch. Okay, cannabis, okay, that's going to replace this. No, you were like, no. You're actually trying to broaden the definition of reparations.
Absolutely. Similar that of to Native Americans or Japanese internment camps where they received reparations, what we provide to Israel and our Jewish brothers and sisters. There is a continued focus on supporting those groups. I want the same effort given to the African American community. And it's not just tuition-free education. It's not just relief on
and those are all forms.
Those are all forms.
And that's again, I think
Absolutely.
I think that's the problem. I think the problem is there are people out there, when they hear reparations, they only think one thing.
Right.
They're thinking, oh no, it's all tied back to slavery. No, this is reparations, repair. Okay, and so if African Americans were greatly impacted by these marijuana laws, we now know one of Nixon's top aides said that Richard Nixon, they started the war on drugs to target African Americans.
Yes.
That was the early 70s. You take the crack cocaine. We know, of course, with the reporting of San Jose Mercury News in terms of the CIA allowing drugs to be flown in, played a part in the explosion of crack. Now you talk about these drug laws, same thing with marijuana, 94 crime bill. And so, yeah, there are people out there who are making crazy amounts of money, and a lot of them don't look like us.
Yes.
You have people like John Boehner, who opposed legalizing marijuana when he was Speaker of the House and in Congress. Now sits on the board. Why? Now it's all about making money.
Absolutely. It's about making money for other individuals, them reaping the benefits on black backs, and I'm not here for it. I don't want it. I want our people to have a stake in that industry that has bled us dry, honestly.
Also, I think that, so for instance, that was one of our partners, one of our sponsors, Roland Unfiltered, is a cannabis company. And so we had a meeting, and there's some town halls that we're doing, and they wanted to focus on expungement. And I said, no. I said, there are people who are already doing that. I said, let them do that. I said, somebody has to focus on the business of cannabis.
Yes.
I said, and so my issue is that, I think this always happens. When we talk about things that impact black folks, when I totally understand why we do it, we always gravitate to the criminal justice piece, the social justice piece, and I said, no, somebody has to be focused on the money piece.
Right.
And we've got to be educating our people by saying, yo, let's not just sit here and watch. I mean, this is an industry that we're watching at the ground level that we need to be in to get paid.
Absolutely. And within my resolution, I talked about the fact that your criminal background shouldn't inhibit your ability to get into the industry. I heard T.I. mention that he has a criminal background, but that's an industry.
Hold up, right there.
That's an industry that he can't even get into.
Right.
Makes no sense to me. So our people have been imprisoned for these crimes involving marijuana,
So the people
and
who
now
were impacted,
we can't engage
right,
in the actual industry.
Right, the folks who were impacted by marijuana can't now participate in an industry that's marijuana.
Yes. The logic.
Well, again, so one of the things that we're going to be doing, we're going to be actually having regular segments specifically on this whole issue of cannabis, because for me, I think for a lot of us, when you don't know, you don't know. That's what I think actually happened here.
I agree.
And I think folks were like, oh, this is going to replace, reparations, when it's kind of like, no, it's just another form. And again, what I just hope that our folks understand is that what is happening right now, again, Right now, folks, 300 plus billion.
Billion.
And this is only what, 3 or 4 years.
Right. Who knows where we'll be in a decade with that industry?
Well, so my suggestion next year, have a separate cannabis resolution.
I agree.
That's not tied to the reparations one, and then folks might be able to understand.
Right, and perhaps an education seminar too, to educate our people on the topic, because we don't have much time on the floor.
Actually, matter of fact, there's a workshop actually in a few minutes.
Oh, good.
Dealing with cannabis as well. But yeah, I think that.
I hope they all attend.
Right. So the key, right, get our people to understand. No, the business of cannabis.
Yes.
Not just the legal aspect of it. No, it's the business of it. Because trust me, there are cats out there who are sitting there ready to become billionaires.
Yes.
Off of something that led to us being in prison for 20, 30, 40 years.
Absolutely.
All right, cool. Well, good luck with it.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thanks a bunch.
Thank you.
All right, folks. Yep, go ahead. I'll just hit this right down here. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot. All right, again, folks, Roland Martin here. We are at the NAACP convention in Detroit. See, I told y'all. See, the reason why this is important, the reason why we should be here, the reason why, because the reality is here. I told you, there's no other media who is here. You wouldn't have actually had opportunity to hear from that sister. You wouldn't have actually hear the debate going on when it comes to the resolutions here. These are actual regular, ordinary people, folks, who are NAACP members, who are advancing issues that we talk about every single day. And so that's why we're here covering it. That's why we're here live streaming it. It may not be sexy. It may not be exciting. It may not be entertainment, but it's information. Information is power. And so that's what's important. So we're going to have that interview. We'll edit it, put it up on our YouTube channel. We'll have it later as well. And so that's what matters. And so, all right, folks, so here's the deal. They're done with their business today with the resolutions. And so we're going to stop. We're going to actually stop our live stream. And then they got a couple other sessions. Joe Madison's about to give a keynote speech. And so we're probably going to pick up Joe Madison's speech as well. So that's it, folks. And I will see you guys a little bit later. Roland Martin here in Detroit. Roland Martin Unfiltered. Take care.
Automatically perpetuate itself, that we have to work at it, that we have to nurture it, that we have to protect it, and that we have to pray for it. When Jehoshaphat was surrounded by his enemies, he became afraid, but the scriptures declare that he turned to worship you and to pray to you. The scripture also declares that you answered him, and you told him that he would win, but you also gave him strategy. You gave him instruction, and you filled him with wisdom. God, we look to you, the author and the finisher of our faith. We need you to be with us, to strengthen us, about us, to keep us, above us, to protect us, beneath us, to uphold us, before us, to direct us, to keep us from straying, and around about us, to defend us. We thank you that you brought us through yesterday. We bless you today for where we are. We may not be where we want to be, but we're on our way. We praise you in advance for what you're going to do on tomorrow. Now unto him that is able to keep us from falling and to present us faultless before his presence of his glory with exceeding joy, to the only wise God our Savior be glory, majesty, dominion, power, both now and forevermore. Amen.
We will stand in recess until we convene at the special plenary session. Thank you, everyone.